Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the one and only, completely centrist, new debate management group. Welcome to the Crucible, everyone. As some or most of you know, those with high IQs, I am Paul P.F. Young, the ultimate moderator, a glorious enlightened centrist, and I've come here because Andrew Wilson's sidekick eunuch, Zen Shapiro, is busy with something. So naturally, I've filled in. And tonight's debate is on feminism. Vague, controversial, and feminine. The three best qualities of any debate. Now, Andrew asked me to kill a few minutes. I'm at the beginning, so chat can fill up. Now, one of the things I do for my colleague, Andrew, is I allow the audience to donate super chats and fund this backwards 2-bit operation, of which Zen Shapiro is allegedly the brains of, according to our last exchange. So anyone who's interested, by all means, throw some super chats in, read, or I'll read well, I guess I have to read all of them, so if you pay money, it's worth it. And I'll have you know that Andrew doesn't pay me shit. And that's fine. I don't pay my moderators shit or anything. So what goes around comes around. So that's all really I have to say. I should probably pull up the Crucible chat. I don't even know if... Oh, here we go. All right, let's see. FYI, this is how I do things. I don't want to get involved in anyone's drama, okay? So this debate, I'm going to let it go where it needs to go. And if these man children can't handle themselves, then I'll step in. But otherwise, like all important issues, as a centrist, I'd like to just ride in the middle and hopefully no one takes any issue with me. Because that's really my goal in life, is to just simply blend into the herd and do absolutely nothing of any significance. Hence why I'm here on a Saturday night, on a holiday weekend. So that'll be fun. Let's see here. PF, you are killing these minutes. Thanks, Bonsai. I appreciate it. Definitely killing the minutes. Amen. Killing for sure. So yeah, we'll kill a few more minutes here. And I told Andrew, I said, Andrew, the last time that I moderated your debate, Zen Shapiro and his lackeys got quite upset with me. And then he said, I don't give a fuck. Come and do it. And so I obliged. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing in this world is respect. The world runs on respect. And if we cannot respect those who we feel their moderating skills are subpar, then who can we respect? Why would I ever show up on a Crucible debate with Zen Shapiro if I did not respect his superior moderating? Anyway, we've got about 30 seconds until I say the magic words. Let the show begin. If anyone has any super chats so far, do I have to be in the regular YouTube chat to see these, or can I just see these in the regular comments? Neurojack. What's up, PF? What's up, Neurojack? Neurojack, among the most sane of the Crucible audience. And let's be real, 90% of the Crucible audience is great. It's just the mosh pit chat that could use a little more Jordan Peterson in their lives. But anyway, Andrew, let's start the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I put all that hard work into the intro and this channel in general, and it's finally paying off. We have our two contestants here, where the blood and rhetoric and glory will be spilled and won tonight. The challenger tonight is Richard, otherwise known as Vegan Gains. Vegan Gains, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
And the defender, looking unusually white collar today. Quite a departure from his Kylo Ren lightsaber hoodie, is Andrew Wilson. Welcome, Andrew, to your own show.
Yeah, appreciate you moderating tonight.
Hey, no problem. Well, the debate is about feminism. Vegan Gains has some challenges to Andrew Wilson's takes. Apparently, Andrew talks about feminism. He's not aware of that. But since Vegan Gains is the challenger, we will let him go first, and we will wish him luck. So by all means, go ahead. You have 7 minutes.
Sure. So I contacted Andrew for this debate because of a debate that I saw him engage in with a feminist named Farah. In that debate, I thought Andrew said some kind of funny things, and Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, but the gist of it was he didn't believe women should have a right to vote due to them not being able to protect their rights or fight for their rights as men can. Now, as far as rights being granted to women, it is true. The reason rights are granted to women is because men have decided to grant them rights. It's also true that society at large has decided to grant gay people rights, trans people rights, black people rights, gingers rights, disabled people rights. Rights are dependent on them being granted. So this is true for not only groups, but also individuals. The reason that any particular person, including Andrew, has any rights is because, again, most of the people that he comes into contact with and society at large has decided to grant him rights. So I don't see how that's unique. A unique aspect of women as a group, that rights are granted to them. Rights have to be granted to everybody. And as far as their ability to fight for their rights, I don't see how women have a lack of ability to fight for their rights, as they certainly have, not only in the women's suffrage movement, but we see women have engaged in warfare. We have seen women support war efforts. And I also don't understand how that relates to voting. So I'd like Andrew to explain some of this, because there are certainly people who have no ability to fight, period, let alone fight for their rights. I mean, there's mentally disabled people, there's physically disabled people, and there's physically disabled people who are mentally disabled, who in no way can make arguments in support of the idea of their rights. They cannot physically fight for their rights, yet we grant them rights, and they also have a right to vote. So I'd like to hear some of this kind of explained and broken down by Andrew. And that is my opening statement.
Thank you, good sir. Riveting. Excellent setup for a glorious duel. Andrew, your response. You have 7 minutes.
Yeah, so let's kind of dive into this. First, you say that you believe a woman having a right to vote based on, you said something along the lines of, I don't understand how it is that a woman doesn't have the right to vote just because a man hasn't allowed her to have that right to vote, which to me seems kind of absurd, because you then went on to say, yes, it's true that men grant women rights. Now, I think you were trying to make the statement that you think society, right, which is everybody and nobody and anybody and somebody, grants rights to everybody. But this would actually be inaccurate. So the first thing that you said is society at large has granted the X factor's rights. So the X factor would be basically everybody that's not a dominant man, right? It'd be gays as a marginalized group, black as a marginalized group, things like this. But that's also not true. Men granted them rights. That was men who granted them rights, and men can take those rights away from those groups whenever they so choose. And they do all the time. They've done it all over the world. They've taken rights away from gays, and there's nothing gays can do about it. They take rights away from women. There's nothing women can do about it. They take rights away from people all the time as a dominant social group. You say that rights have to be granted. This is also not true, or at least it's only a half truth. Men can grant themselves rights. If they get enough of them together, they can decide that even if they're being oppressed, that they don't want to be oppressed anymore. They don't like that shit very much, and they can take up arms and grant themselves rights, and have done that historically many, many, many times. So no, men don't have to necessarily grant other men their rights. That's the point. Whereas they do have to grant it to women. They have to, because women can't do that and men can. The women's suffrage movement, which you brought up, that was not women fighting for their rights. That was women whining for their rights. There was no fight anywhere. Where was the fight? Where were these women taking up arms? Where were they bashing the men over the head? Where were they taking the men on? Where were they taking on the patriarchy with hands, feet, fist, and gun? Nowhere. They were just whining, and they were heavily supported by men's funding, or it never would have happened to begin with. So no, they've never fought for their rights ever. They've just whined. They don't fight. They can't fight. What are they going to do? They can't do anything. To men as a collective can simply put their foot down on women whenever they so choose, even as a small collective. Even if they're outnumbered 10-1, they can still do this. We've seen this in France, for instance, in World War II, where 2/3 of the population post-World War II was completely and totally devastated. You only had 1/3 or less. Some estimates as low as 19% of the population was men. That's how low the estimate in some cases could be, because of how many died between World War I and World War II. So no, I disagree kind of heavily with all of your positions. Now, when it comes to kind of your main contention, which is voting in and of itself, I don't consider it to be necessarily evil or a moral good or a moral imperative of any kind. I think it's just one system of many systems, but still men are going to be the ones who create that system and grant that system to women. So that's my position on this.
Okay, so do you believe women should have a right to vote?
Real quick, before we get in the back and forth, just want to say a couple of things. Thank you for the opening statement, Andrew. Here in the Crucible, we do things a little bit differently. I, as the moderator, will not be getting involved. And just officially, for the FBI agent and agent of Mossad watching, I do not endorse anyone's perspective on here. I am merely moderating for the sake of discussion. We'll go for an hour and a half, back and forth, and then we'll take questions and super chats. I will not be reading the super chats until the Q&A. But until then, good luck, guys.
All right. Go ahead, man. What was your question?
Yeah, so do you believe women should have a right to vote or not?
If men grant it to them. I mean, I don't think that women, I don't think that men ought to do horrible or evil things to women. I don't think that they ought to do that. But I also think that they're in a particularly unique situation due to the fact that they make society run, and they're the operators which make society run, where that's going to be uniquely their decision to make.
Okay, but the basis for whether or not you think women should have a right to vote is whether or not men decide to give them a right to vote.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so say if men had an interest in the political system to vote for, say, repealing women's rights.
Yeah.
You don't think women should have any sort of political power in a system where they can also vote and influence political change for their own benefit?
Well, it's more correct to say that they wouldn't. And it's not a matter of what I would ought. It's just a matter of they could not. So whether I would ought it to be true or not ought it to be true, what descriptively is true is that they can't. They can't stop men from taking away their rights. They just can't do it. They have
right, but you did say that you're against the idea of doing horrible things to women, right? So like,
yeah, and men.
In theory, you'd be against something like spousal grape.
I mean, it depends on how that's defined, but I mean, in general, any type of grape I would be against. Yeah.
Well, like strangling somebody, forcing yourself upon them, you'd be against something like that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I believe still to this day, there's a few states that don't actually recognize spousal rape. So,
Mm-hmm.
right. So women would be
and so men, if they wanted to, could go into those states with guns, and they could say, "You're going to change this fucking law," right? But women can't. Vegan gains, they can't do that. That's
well,
the
they can.
distinction. No, they can't. They
They can.
lose.
So they
No,
can.
they can't. Can you name a single time in history where they
Yeah.
have? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so the women's suffrage movement, in France in particular, women actually grabbed pole arms. So not just pitchforks, but also they got things like halberds and spears, and they actually marched and demanded a right to vote. Bombs and what is it? Fires were also set on businesses during the women's suffrage movement. Not just in
How
Europe,
many
but
men
also
did
in the
women
United
kill
States.
for their rights in France?
Well, I don't know how that matters because really, ultimately,
Because
when
if
it
the men
comes
in France
to
said, "No, fucking put your poles down, you stupid bitches, or else we're going to smack the shit out of you," they couldn't do anything, Richard.
well, not okay. So not every right that's fought for requires like extreme physical violence.
Yeah,
Like
it
I mean, like an
does. It
entire
always
world
requires
war. No, it
force.
doesn't.
Yeah. Well, how do you back up rights without force, Richard? Tell me.
Well, I'm saying not every right that is being granted has required a world war. So you
Well,
don't.
first of all, I think depending. I'm trying to figure out what you mean, but I think it has. I think every
No.
single right you have requires force. I can't think of a right that doesn't require force to be enforced. Can you?
Well, to be enforced, yes, but I'm saying to be granted, no.
Yeah, to be
So,
granted,
so
because, and I'll tell you why that has to be true. Because if you grant a right to a person, what actually gives them the right if there's no force? So
okay,
how
well,
could they
there.
keep the right if there's no force allowing them to keep the right? In other words, if I say, no, wife, you don't have any fucking rights. She can call men and they can come arrest my ass using force. So force is the mechanism for rights.
So you have a right to free speech, like the First Amendment. How many times have you seen police interactions where police officers violate First Amendment rights? So somebody's protesting, they say you can't have that sign here, they get arrested. Well, how does this play out? This plays out in court. I don't think there's ever been a situation where I don't know, like it there like there's a shootout over whether or not somebody can hold a sign up
There
between
has
like a
there
cop and other cops.
Well, okay. Well, there has been, except I can give you a perfect distinction, which is the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. These are distinctions where people said, no, we're not going to, pay maybe your tax or your tariff, or we don't want this type of compelled speech, or we don't want to be oppressed in our speech in these ways. Various factors came into all sorts of small micro revolutions. In fact, another example that I can give you, I believe that it was called the Battle of Athens, which happened inside of America. This was an American city, and the police magistrate was so corrupt that men went home and got their guns and went back to town and literally overthrew the local magistrate and put in their own government. So, in other words, when they felt oppressed, they could just go do something about it. I would like to see an example of that by women anywhere in history ever.
Okay, so I don't know of any um again, aside from like women's suffrage where women did actually in fact take up arms, at least in Europe.
Well, they carried
There
shit. That's not taking up arms. Taking up
well, that's the
arms.
same.
No,
That's
taking up
literally
arms
the
is you're
same.
you're like actually walking down the street and killing people. That's taking up arms against something.
Okay, well, in that example you just gave, were people shot and murdered?
Yeah. In fact, there was a massive shootout. They raided the National Guard armory and they had a battle all night.
Okay, in any case, like ultimately, if you have enough of a societal disruption to where the only sort of the only way to resolve this is either by, again, granting rights or coming to, I don't know, some fight and literally having force decide whether or not rights will, like, who gets the rights they want. Women have done this. Like, again, women's suffrage. It's just that men decided it's not worth it to actually take up arms against women and fight. No, that's absolutely what happened.
Here's what happened. Most women were against the vote. Most women, let me say that again, were against the vote. Most of them. So you had anti-suffragettes, which aren't covered in history very often, but the anti-suffragette movement was much higher, and feminists used feminist propaganda, and they used the money of giant elite men in order to push through the agenda. And it still wasn't even popular after it passed. It still wasn't even popular after it passed for a long while. And you want to know what the reasoning is behind the anti-suffragettes, the women who were against the right to vote, is they said, we can't enforce our own rights. We don't have the ability to do that. So why should we be able to vote? Why would we be able to vote? We can't enforce it. Men have to enforce it for us.
When you say that, like, what do you mean by women cannot enforce their own rights? Like,
it means that as a small monolith of any size, virtually any size, there could be like some maybe extreme examples, but if you have, let's just say 10% of the men of a population who decide that they're not going to follow or obey a law, or they're going to oppress women, or they're going to do whatever the fuck they want, there's really not very much that can be done about it by anybody except men. So men are going to be the people who push force, and therefore they're the ones who are the grantor of rights, either to themselves or to women or to anybody. So you could take the same tone in slavery. You could say that men granted men rights, men fought for their right to not be slaves. All of this would be true, but women play very little in the way of a role of that because they just physically can't.
What do you mean physically can't? Like, women can pick up a gun and shoot. So what do you mean physically can't?
Yeah, but have you seen what happens in the statistics when you take female soldiers and you apply the statistical or the standard, the application standard for just regular basic training, and have women go through it? They have to give them entirely different standards because their upper body strength is so slight. Their lower body strength can't handle it. They have completely different standards, which is why to this day, I don't believe there's even been a single woman who has gotten through actual SEAL team training. Not a single one. And this is the difference between men and women. Now, you operate under physique. You know this is true. You know that you're ginormously strong in comparison to women. Just the amount of weapons that you could wield would be superior to what a woman could.
I've seen, so I don't know if the Army's done their own research. I've seen the research on Marines. The Marine Corps did a study comparing female and male, soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, women are less physically capable, so they can't carry as much equipment. I think it's like a difference of like 30 pounds or something like that of total equipment they can carry. They're also more likely to get injured, this and that. But like, again, there are like within group differences where you can find exceptionally physically fit women and exceptionally like inadequate men. So you do in these like stats see women who are outpacing some men.
I don't
like
dispute that.
Like I've known dudes who are like 5'5".
There are exceptionally strong women, and there are exceptionally weak
but
men.
Like at the end of the day, the Marine Corps did determine that it is suitable, especially in cases where like certain combat roles can't be filled because we have a huge obesity problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of eligible recruits is really narrow, and especially in a situation where you're not going to have forced conscription, it's going to be very difficult to fill all the necessary combat roles.
True, but their preference would be that men filled those roles and not women.
Well, that would be the preference, but it'd also be the preference to
but
have
why would it be the preference?
Physical, like, again, well,
Why would
it's
it be the
also a
preference, Richard? Why?
Wait. Well, let me finish. It would also be a preference to have women fill these roles as opposed to obese men.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
so do you think fat people shouldn't have a right
There's
to
plenty
vote
of
on the
fat
basis
women, but
that they can't join the
there's plenty
military?
of fat women too. Like
Well,
I mean, in equal
there
numbers.
are.
So
should like
they're the only
fat
reason they're
people not have a
drawing.
right to vote?
The only reason they're drawing from women is because there's not enough men. That's it. And the
Well,
other thing is that the preference here is always going to be for men. Why, Richard? Why is it always going to be for men over women when it comes to the
men
military?
on average are more physically fit,
Right.
and,
Because fighting isn't just about picking up a gun. Fighting is also about living in trenches. It's about having very little to eat. It's about being physically strong enough to endure the elements. It's about a lot more than just, oh, I picked up a gun and now I could go fight for my rights. That's not how it fucking goes.
Yeah, well, again, like you're kind of glossing over this. There are requirements for the military. Like you can't just be like a fat retard and end up, joining the military. There are certain physical and mental standards. And at the moment, there are so few men that meet those physical and mental requirements that we're now recruiting massive amounts of women more than ever before to fill combat roles.
Yeah, but there's still very
so,
few
like, I
women
don't
who
even
can meet those
understand,
requirements. There's still
like,
very few women who can meet those requirements, even with all these fat men around. So it's
Yeah,
still
so-
always going to be unequally yoked to the point of extremity, unless you can demonstrate that men or that women, even going up against unhealthy men when they're at their fittest, are going to prevail, because most of the time, even then, they're not going to. So even if a woman who's 5'5" and jacked goes up against a 6'2" fat dude, I'm still putting my money on the 6'2" fat dude, and so are you. You are too. Tell me you're not.
That
Tell me you're not,
depends.
dude.
That
But for the most
depends
part, on average, you would, right?
Like, again, that depends. I've seen MMA fights where like a man goes up against a woman, but the woman is about the same size.
Yeah, come on, these people aren't
and is
trained in MMA, dude.
experienced,
These
but
people aren't. Most people are not trained in hand-to-hand
regardless.
combat and years of training in MMA. That's ridiculous. The average woman who would have to fight for her rights against a monolith of men, even if they were big fat men, okay, big fatty fatzos. Women are 5'5", 5'6", 5'7". You're telling me you think that physically they're going to do better against men?
Right, but the point that you're glossing over is that there's many men who are completely inequipped or inadequate to either fight in the military or even fight for their
But
rights.
there's just as many women.
So
again, you still have
I don't
the
understand
equalization. You still have
well,
the equalization.
I don't understand why you're looking at this from a group level and not, to some extent at least, at an individual level. Like, should people who are
That would be the
physically or
worst
mentally-
way. That would be the worst way to look at it.
Why?
Because an individual, no individual can enforce their rights for the most part. They can only do it on a small scale, maybe against other individuals. But it takes a collective, or at least a small group, to be able to enforce the rights for themselves and the people who are around them. Individuals themselves, they have a hard time enforcing their individual rights. In other words, it's essentially impossible to do. So if there was one woman who said, I want the right to vote, and nobody else wanted her to have the right to vote, you would agree with me immediately. She ain't getting the fucking right to vote, right? So,
Sure.
I mean, that's just it. But if you have,
Okay.
so we would have to look at this as collective. Same thing with men. If one man wants the right to vote, he ain't getting it. But if you have 100 million men who want the right to vote, they're fucking getting it.
Okay, so is this purely a descriptive claim you're making, or are you also making this a sort of a normative claim where it's almost like a might makes right, like because there is such an amount of power within a certain group, they should be able to either grant or taketh rights away?
Right. No. So let me explain this. Might makes right is fundamentally, from my Christian worldview, untrue. I think that might descriptively makes. I'm just not saying that it ought make right. In other words, I don't think that just because you're mighty and you enforce your will, that means you're doing a moral thing, or you're doing a righteous thing, or you're doing a good thing. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And going back a bit, you don't think it's either a good or bad thing that men grant women's rights? You're like neutral on it?
Well, no, I mean, I think I would have to descriptively say that because this is the hierarchical order which is put forward by our almighty creator, that it's probably a good thing. And yes, I do think that it's generally a good thing for the hierarchy to be run by men. Yeah. And it always has been
So,
and it always will be.
so you think it's a good thing that women don't have a right to vote?
If men decide that they don't have a right to vote and they do it as a collective, I think that, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Why would that be a problem?
Okay, well, for quite a long time, and
Mhm.
even to this day, in some
Yeah.
states and in probably most countries, women have absolutely no recourse if they are raped by their husbands. There's no laws granting them a protection against something like that, like
It's
that
not
sort
true.
of spousal abuse.
That's not true.
That is true.
No, it's not true.
That is true.
Then show me an example of where you can pin your wife down by force and rape her, and this is not something which she can go and get recourse from the law. I don't believe you.
Well, again, there's no particular law written on the books in certain states stating that a woman can be raped by their spouse. And actually, and by the way,
Well, that's
in
well, hang
Islamic,
on. That's an affirmative right. In the United States, rights are affirmed in the negative. So, in other words, to frame this the best way I can for you, you don't have a right to vote right now, Richard. Did you know that? Your right to vote is affirmed in the negative. You have no right to vote. You've never had a right to vote. What the amendment says specifically is that if a vote is had, they have to let you vote. But there's no actual right to vote. You can look it up right now. There's no actual right to vote in the United States. Your rights here are affirmed in the negative. In other words, our Constitution only spells out what the government can't do. It doesn't spell out what it must do. So it can't restrict our guns. It can't restrict our speech. It can't restrict this. It can't do this. It's not allowed to do that. It's not allowed to do this. It doesn't say what it has to do.
let me look this up real quick.
Yeah, just put in voting negative rights. Voting is a negative right.
Only two states, Oregon and New Jersey, have abolished the marital exemption rule. The legal system of most countries exempt the husband from prosecution of the rape of his wife. This is from Office of Justice Programs.
So that's an affirmative right. But so what? I need you to demonstrate for me that in all 50 states of the union, that if a woman goes to the police, and just don't use the R word, say grape.
Sure.
Okay. But if she goes to the police and says, I was raped by my husband, he pinned me down and forced me into a sexual intercourse, that she has no recourse. I don't believe that.
Okay, well, for one thing, there are many women that you can find. You can put out a call on your Twitter, or whatever social media.
It's anecdotal, and you don't believe them yourself, Richard, because I saw a video. I saw a video of you yourself make the claim that a woman had lied about getting raped.
Women can lie.
That's right. So you yourself don't believe all women. You don't believe all women, right?
No, I believe people based on the strength of evidence of their claim. But I
think that's fair.
We don't even like, by the way, even if you fucking don't believe that there's been a single case of a woman getting raped by their husband and having no recourse.
Not what I said.
And well, we can literally look at other countries who on the books, like Islamic countries.
Well, do you plan on invading those countries?
An explicit right. Sorry?
Are you planning on invading those countries?
Okay, well, the point you made is that men have dominion over women, essentially.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones who grant the rights and can take it away.
So I can say it's immoral in those nations for those men, under my Christian worldview, to grape their wives, to force their wives to have sex with them. I think that that's morally abhorrent.
Why would that be morally?
If you can demonstrate it, because it would be against my religious values. It would be against my ethical system. So I would say that that's immoral.
Well,
but
no, it wouldn't be.
I can also make the descriptive claim that unless you plan on invading those nations to stop them, then you're basically agreeing with me that men have the dominion because there
Well,
ain't shit you can do about it. And there ain't shit they can do about it.
well, Andrew, you wouldn't disagree with them because, again, you said men have dominion over women. If men have had the imperative to deny those rights to women, then that would be the right thing to
It's
do.
not unlimited dominion. That's not what I said. That wasn't my claim.
Well,
That
you didn't
I
say
claimed
unlimited
that. What did I
dominion.
claim specifically? That women should not be treated poorly. They should not be treated badly. They should not be abused. None of these things should happen. Dominion, the same
That's a
way that you.
consequence of not granting them those rights. Like
It's
a
not
right
a
to vote.
consequence of that. You don't have to
Absolutely
beat a
is.
woman because he can't vote. That's stupid.
No, I'm saying that's a consequence of not being allowed power in the political system or the legal system.
No, it's
Like,
not.
if women don't have a right to vote, if women don't
So
have
men are
any-
just going to start raping and pillaging women because women don't have rights that men already gave them. Like men, who do you think gives men give them the rights to begin with? They're benevolent enough to give them the rights to begin with. Do you think that people who have mothers and they have daughters, men who have mothers and daughters, just walk around abusing women? No,
Yes.
bro, they don't do. No,
Yes.
no,
What
they
do you-
don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
You don't think men abuse their fucking
I didn't say
family
that
members?
there's not people who do abuse. It happens, but it happens from women on men too.
Okay, the especially egregious physical abuse that's almost entirely coming from men. So yeah,
unless it's on
there's women who
children.
will,
Yeah, unless
sorry?
it's on children, and then it's mostly perpetrated by women.
I don't know about that.
Well, it is true.
But
55% of all child abuse is conducted by women and not men.
okay, that's interesting. But in any case, then that would also mean 45% of the abuse is coming from men. So you're admitting that this is
right on par.
commonplace.
Like that doesn't mean it's commonplace. Why would that mean it's commonplace? That doesn't follow. Just because you look at the stat and you can break down the percentage of who conducts a crime doesn't mean the crime is common. That's absurd.
Okay, so family abuse is extremely common.
Well, physical abuse?
Yeah,
No.
that would be extremely common.
No, it's not
Let me
common.
see. Percentage of children who experience physical abuse. I'll just
Yeah, but
quickly
I want
Google
this defined as to what is considered physical abuse.
So approximately 1 in 4 children experience child abuse or neglect in their lifetime.
I want physical abuse.
Yeah, of maltreated children, 18% are abused physically, 78% are neglected, 9% are abused sexually. So that is out of 25%. So if 18% of 25% are abused, you can do the quick math there. I think that's about 5% roughly.
Okay, so that's still not a high number. Just so you know,
that is a pretty high number. 5%.
Well, no,
that would be 1 in 20.
So these are people.
1 in
right?
20 isn't
Well,
high?
I said physical abuse. Whatever. I don't know what these other things mean. I don't know what neglect is. How do they define neglect?
Explained. I mentioned physical abuse specifically. It'd be roughly 5%. Right. 1 in 20 is low to you?
Well, I don't believe it's 1 in 20. You haven't defined the terms of what constitutes abuse.
Well, I mentioned physical abuse specifically.
Yeah, but I don't know what that means. What is considered physical abuse by these people?
That would be physical. Hitting, slapping.
Yeah, but hitting's not physical abuse.
How is hitting not physical abuse?
Because there may be times where you need to make a correction, especially with a child, which is an important correction in order to spare them additional pain that they would not ordinarily have. Like, for instance, don't put your finger in the light socket, Johnny, and you smack Johnny's hands so that he remembers not to put his finger in the light socket. What's that?
That's not physical abuse. So,
of course
like,
not.
Shoving. So if I were to shove somebody out of the way, like if they're going to be hit by a car, like that would be an analogous example.
Right.
That's
so I believe that
abuse.
spanking, which is often introduced as a prism of abuse inside of these studies, is not abuse.
It is.
It's not.
It's provably
it's correction.
Using corporal punishment against a child has been proven to be bad in every conceivable way.
Yeah, by people who have no children. What do I care what they say? Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Sorry, you're relying on your own personal anecdote. Well, I hit my kids and they turned out good.
You're relying on your own
versus
personal
research.
anecdote. The only thing you're
No,
saying
it's
that,
not.
which is, what's the proof that
Sorry.
people's opinions are that if you spank a child, that the correction doesn't work?
Okay, sorry. Do you think prospective cohorts are less reliable than your own personal anecdotal experience?
It's not just my personal anecdotal experience. People have been using the cane on children since the time before time forgot.
this is insane. So
It's
again,
not insane. There's nothing wrong with spanking.
Yes, there is. And
no, there's not.
Provably, according to prospective cohorts, children who get spanked or caned or any sort of corporal punishment is used as like a...
Send me the study.
Sure. Like any sort of corporal punishment that's used against children.
Okay. And so here's the research that shows that smacked kids do better in life. And I'll send that over to you. A study has found that kids smacked until about the age 6 turn out better. Not only do they tend to do better at school, but they also likely do well for themselves later in life as compared to the kids who've never been spanked by their parents.
Yeah, that's hard for me to believe, but more harm than good. Summary of scientific research on the intended and unintended effects of corporal punishment in children. I don't know if you want me to send you that. But
it's by the way, it's a troll study. I'm joking.
Okay, sure. But in any case, if you look at the aggregate research, children who receive corporal punishment as a means of correcting behavior, so smacking, spanking, caning, whipping, belts, they do poorer in pretty much every metric. They're less likely to complete school. They're more likely to be depressed. As far as relationships in the future, they're less likely to have long-term meaningful relationships. They're more likely to be...
Let's assume for a second I make a concession for all of this, that spanking children is by far the absolute worst way that you can correct children. What does that have to do with the fact that men grant women rights?
Well, we went off course a little bit, but you were basically saying that on the basis that men grant women rights, you were assuming that men are in general
benevolent. Yes, I assume that men in general are benevolent. And
well,
if
they're certainly not.
Really, so you think if we make a law tomorrow that says that murder is legal, while I would concede that murder will increase, are you just assuming that men are just going to start murdering with wild abandon? They have no self-control. They have no virtue. They have no nothing. Would you start murdering people, Richard?
No one. Well, yeah, I probably would actually.
Yeah, you probably would. So maybe maybe the reason you think the way that you do is because of the way that you are.
Well, no. So no one is entirely benevolent. There are people who do mostly good, but do some bad things. And I think if you were able to peer into people's personal lives, people that you thought were really nice, may not treat their families or their wives or spouse with as much respect as you'd appreciate. So
I'm digging into this, by the way. In the living situation with the highest odds of significant abuse is when children live with their mother and her male partner who's not the biological father.
Right. Okay.
So biological fathers aren't running around probably very often abusing their children. That's not the case in point here. When you start to dig into this, it turns out that women seem to be the problem here more than the men. Once again,
no, you just admitted it's the men committing
it. I didn't. In fact, I told you the child abuse rates for women are higher than men.
You literally just showed me a statistic where men are the perpetrators.
I didn't say that men were the perpetrators. I said the highest likelihood of abuse is when the biological father's not present in the home.
Yes, and when the woman has a male partner. So
that doesn't mean the male partner is that doesn't mean the male partner is perpetuating the abuse if 55% of it's committed by the women, Richard.
Okay, well, that's a separate statistic. You're just conflating the different.
The conflation would be by you. That would be by you.
Conflating the different sources.
That would be you. Who is conflating?
You just told me.
I never told you that the cause of the abuse is by the man. You made that up. You made it up. So you're conflating. I didn't conflate anything.
okay, in any case, I think we can agree that there is a significant enough rate of abuse against women and children perpetrated by men where you may want to include these people in the legal and political system.
Why?
Where, because okay, well, if men are like going to have complete dominion and you have a society where, like, again, women do not have little to no recourse when it comes to them getting abused, them getting raped,
They do have
children getting
recourse.
abused.
Whoa. That's two
Sorry.
different things. What do you mean they have no recourse? They can go to men and they can get recourse, which is what they do right now. Right now,
Okay.
if a woman's being abused and she feels like her rights are impugned upon, and she goes to court and the court rules in her favor, who enforces her rights? Who do you think shows up? Do you think it's women who show up to enforce her rights, or do you think it's men who show up to enforce her rights?
This is, well, there are women who are police officers.
The exceptions to the rules.
I don't know how that's an exception. There are female police
yes,
officers.
There are female.
Like,
there's even female loggers, but you know how many there are? It's less than 1%, I believe.
I don't know why that matters. There are women who are responsible for enforcing
because men are responsible for the building of all infrastructure. They're responsible for the building of how society runs. They keep the electrical grid up. They keep the entire system in place. Not only is that one function of the enforcement of rights, but also they are the ones who are going to end up physically enforcing it. They're going to physically enforce the rights for women, which is what they do now.
You don't see a potential issue where, if you have a society where men are generally indifferent to, I don't know, the plight or suffering of women, where, oh, you got raped by your husband? Sure you did, toots. Okay, I'll write down a report. Like, you don't see an issue where,
of course,
society...
I do. That would be an immoral non-virtuous society. However,
certainly,
this would have to do... This has nothing to do with whether or not the women are involved in the political system, but how virtuous the men are. Virtuous the men are. Why?
It absolutely does.
Why? We don't have to listen to them now, Richard. We could just take rights away from women tomorrow, couldn't we?
You don't think if women had a right to vote, they could vote in, say, police chiefs?
Their right to vote only exists because we give it to them.
I don't care. That's the point. Like, if women have a right to vote, you don't think they'd have power to elect in?
They don't have their powers. It's a faux power. They don't have real power.
Can you stop cutting me off? You don't think if women had a right to vote, there would be a greater likelihood of, say, police chiefs, mayors, politicians, officials that are more sympathetic to their problems?
Why would they be more sympathetic to their problems just because they could vote?
Well, I'm saying, if women could vote, they could elect in officials that would be more sympathetic to their problems. And because women make up 50% of the population, that would be a big motivator for certain politicians to actually be sympathetic.
As long as men allow them to vote, sure.
Yes, but what I'm pointing out is you're probably going to see lower instances of certain people in society getting mistreated, abused, not being considered, if women have a right to vote.
No, well, that I dispute. Why would you see more abuse in society just based on the vote? How much abuse do you think that there was pre-women voting? I don't understand.
A lot.
Why do you think that there was show me, prove, demonstrate that there was significantly more abuse before women could vote?
Okay, sure. Let me see. There have been big changes in grape rates over time. Let me see. So
that's not what I'm asking you for. I'm asking you to demonstrate for me that men, before women could vote in the United States, were just running around abusing fucking women. That's absurd. Why would they do that?
I don't know what you mean by that, but there have been reductions in spousal abuse, incling
that's because less people are getting married.
No.
Yeah.
No. This is rates per capita. And
yeah, I understand, but even if it's per capita, if you lessen the pool, you're still going to have less.
No,
Yeah,
that's not how that works.
it is how it works.
No, that's not how that works.
Yeah, it is how it works.
That's not how that works.
Okay, so let me ask you a
The
question.
population,
If
if
you
you're
only
looking
have a
at the
pool,
same
hang on.
population,
If you only have a pool of 5 people who are going to get married, okay, there are 5 groups, and you go ahead and you take that group. Do you think that the per capita ratio of those 5 people is going to be the same as if you did 100 million? Do you think it's going to be the same across
yes,
the board?
if all else is equal, then yes.
All
Like, I
else is
mean,
never equal. Come on, dude.
You could have a situation where you have such a small sample size that okay, if you only have one couple versus 100 million, you're not going to see a meaningfully
Well,
you're not going to get meaningful statistics.
when do you think statistics started for spousal abuse?
I'm not sure, but
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I don't think in the 1700s there was rampant abuse of women, and I don't think in the 1800s there was rampant abuse of women. I don't know where you came up with the idea that there was.
well, I don't know how you could figure that. Like, again,
Give me some evidence to the contrary.
Well, what's the figure? Like 1 in 5 women in their lifetime will likely be a victim of a sexual assault of some kind.
Well,
Like,
they'll say that anyway.
Okay, well, we could say they're all liars, right?
I'm not saying they're all liars. I'm just saying
right.
that this is
We
all
could
based on
say,
self-reported data.
well, okay. Well, this isn't just based on self-reporting. This is
The
also
1 in
based
4
on,
would be based on self-reporting. If you were
well,
just going to use police stats, it's nowhere near that high.
well, if you're looking purely based on like FBI statistics, I think that does correlate with the 1 in 5 figure.
Show me.
Lifetime 1 in 5.
Show me that the FBI statistics show that 1 in 5 women report that they've been sexually assaulted. This bullshit.
Well, you also have to take into account relatively small proportion of these attacks are actually reported. So if you're only going to
Well,
look
then
at
how do they know about them if
reporting,
they're not reported?
again, they use other methods of research to.
You mean like
gather
we're
some
getting
of
them to
this.
report? How could they possibly know it without them being reported? Can you explain
Well,
that to me?
again, these aren't, like, you don't have to have perfectly 100% accurate stats. If we're, I think we, like, this is for all crimes, by the way. About 20% of like burglaries are reported. Roughly like 20% of homicides are reported. Like, this is for all crime. So
So you're just making estimates.
no, it's not just an estimate.
Well, how is it not
what
just
I'm
an
pointing
estimate?
out is these sorts of crimes are very common. They're common enough where you may want to include 50% of the population as part of the legal and political system, so that they could perhaps influence changes that benefit themselves or society as a whole.
They're just all you're doing is adding an extra
Okay,
step.
well,
They're just petitioning patriarchal men again for their rights, regardless of if they can vote or not. Here's why. If men collectively decide tomorrow that women can't vote, they can't. But if women decide tomorrow collectively that men can't vote, we can. That's the difference. It's very simple.
Okay,
There's nothing they can do about it. And we can do whatever we want because that's just the way it's set up, bro.
right. That's why Nazi Germany happened.
That's not that. Why would that be a Nazi principle? Almost every nation on planet Earth, which are not Nazis, had to use this principle, bro.
This isn't a principle. I don't.
It is a.
Hang
on.
You just first of all,
hang on. What do you mean it's not a principle?
You claimed this was just a purely descriptive observation you're making. So if it's
no, I didn't claim that.
A normative claim.
I did claim a descriptor, but I also gave you an ought. My ought was due to Christian virtues, Christian virtue ethics. I don't believe that women should ever be abused by men. I also believe that men have a responsibility, a duty to step in and stop any type of abuse which is happening. I believe that divorce for the cases of abuse is just fine. And so does the church that I belong to, the Orthodox Church. They believe that that's true. Okay. The only time that we would step in, and it would be for like when people say irreconcilable differences, like we just don't like each other's faces, then we would probably try to step in and say something along the
it's
lines of,
interesting you mention that you belong to a patriarchal system that's known for rampant sexual abuse.
no, that would be the
Within the
Catholic
Catholic
Church.
Church? Oh, you're not Catholic?
Yeah, I'm
Okay, sorry.
Orthodox. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you on the Catholic Church. However, it's not any more rampant than it is in the public school system, Richard.
I'm not sure about that, but
It's
if
not.
it was,
You know
yeah,
why?
but
Do you know why that is? It's because
why?
predators go where the children are. Makes sense.
Well, sure. I'd like to see the statistics. I'm not so sure if that is the case. I'd be very surprised, in fact.
Well, no. I mean, it is the case for sure. And you know, you can just kind of pull it in. There's very few Catholics inside the United States. Of course, you have this massive pool of kids who go to public school. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet for a sexual predator, and sexual predators go where the victims are. So that's why public school sexual abuse is so rampant.
I don't know if it's as high as in the Catholic Church, but I do know of some pretty crazy cases. I think there was an entire school faculty in Los Angeles that had to be replaced because every single member was found to be involved in some predator ring.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I'm not a Catholic. But this aside, let me be very specific here with what I'm saying. I'm saying that men are the grantors of all rights to women, and that necessarily is always going to be true. Always, everywhere. And it is right now, and they can take them away whenever they want, and women have basically zero recourse except to reapply to men to get those rights again.
Right. Well, even if we were to accept that as true, the point I'm making is there is
do you accept it as true?
Sorry?
Do you accept it as true?
I don't know if I entirely agree with that. To some extent, I agree, but I don't entirely agree with it. But
well, which part do you disagree with of that descriptor?
There's a level of truth to it, but there's a level of distruth. Like, women do have an ability to fight for their rights. Like, you will see, like, I mean, look at some of the protests that are happening in Europe and Ukraine and Russia.
Oh yeah, all those women who are in the street blowing shit up. Come on, man.
No, well, there are.
It's all men for the most part. I would say like 98% is men over there blowing shit up. Come on,
80%.
Dude.
We could go with 80%, but
it's again, overwhelmingly men.
It is overwhelmingly men, but women are also involved in this too. But the big point here is you have an interest in protecting women and children and, say, people who have a lack of power in society. So you wouldn't want, children absolutely have a lack of power in society.
Yeah. So, but that doesn't mean you're specifically only talking about children as having a lack of power.
Well, they're like disabled people. I'm sure you don't want them to get mistreated or abused. Like,
yeah, that's correct. I think that men have a virtuous duty to not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So if you don't include these people in the political and legal system, that opens them up to far more abuse. Like, there's a reason why, by the way, there's a reason why in a lot of these police precincts, there's a goal to have a certain amount of female officers. It prevents female suspects from getting abused and taken advantage of.
It sure doesn't prevent those female officers from getting their asses kicked by male suspects very much, does it?
Well, again, you can arrange duties in a way that's beneficial for everybody.
Right. So what you have to do is you have to give them lighter duties, because if they run into men, they can't fucking deal with it nearly as well. And men are far better equipped to be cops. Just admit that that's true.
That is true.
Of course. And they're better equipped to be soldiers. They're better equipped for violence. They're better equipped.
Wait. That's an interesting point you make. Yes, men are more well equipped to commit violence, and they're also much more sexually motivated. The chances of a male officer sexually abusing a female suspect are much greater than a female officer sexually abusing a suspect.
Yeah, I can see that that's true, but I think it's beside the point. A cop's job is to enforce law, and it's going to be necessary that you have males do that. If you had a female police force, it'd be a joke. But if you had an all-male police force, it wouldn't be.
Well, again, it's clearly in the best interest of everybody to have a certain amount of female officers at least performing certain duties.
Well, okay, fair enough. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Like
to cut you off.
I'm not saying women should do absolutely everything that a male officer does. I think there are certain situations where you have very dangerous suspects where you would require a larger, more intimidating man. Sure. Okay, but like there are
Well, like what
situations.
situation would be better if you were dealing with any disgruntled man, whether he was 5'1" and drunk or 6'6" and drunk, that you wouldn't want to have a
Well,
male officer on the scene rather than the
well,
female?
sure, but you would prefer to have a female officer on scene, say, searching a female suspect.
So that she
Maybe.
doesn't accuse the cop of raping her.
Well, this has actually happened though.
It has. I
Um,
agree. So that's fine. We can have. Let me just ask you this: if the entire police department was male, it was only allowed to be male, period, and you had another police department that was only allowed to be female, which police department do you think would be better equipped to deal with crime?
Violent crime, men would be
All crime.
better. Well, I would say for violent crime, men would be better equipped. For non-violent crimes, I think women would be better equipped for the most part.
So, which police department do you think would outperform the other one?
It depends, but like,
Let's say
We're
all
not-
things equal.
we're-
All things
we're not-
equal. They're both in high crime areas. That's where they're both are. Which one do you think is going to do better, Richard?
like again, I think they would be better at doing certain things. So I think women would probably be better with non-violent crimes. I think they'd probably be able to talk to
the crimes that
suspects and
people
get
care about
information
the
a little bit.
least. The crimes that people generally care about absolutely the least. Writing
Okay.
tickets. You want meter maids and writing tickets and shit like that.
Well,
I mean, come on, man.
Well, Andrew, you have to be able to get along with the public, and you do have to be able to get along with suspects. And I've seen female officers be much less combative with
Okay,
suspects.
but men are just fine with
I
social
don't-
skills, especially
this-
with other men. So I
Great,
don't.
great.
I just want you to
I
answer this honestly for me. Which department, all things equal, both in high crime areas, which one do you think is going to perform better? The all male police force or the all female?
I don't know what you consider performing well. Like, if you mean by making more arrests,
Solve more crimes.
Sorry,
Solve
Solving
more crimes and put more suspects in jail.
It would probably be the male force.
Yeah.
But again, that's not the point I'm making. So the point I'm making is you have some vulnerable individuals, the vulnerable individuals in this case being women. With a male, like with an all male police force, if you have men interviewing women who are claiming to have been victims of rape, you're going to see a much higher likelihood of them not being taken seriously. And you can see this in every industry, by the way. This is a big problem in the healthcare industry, where women will report having pain to a male doctor, and male doctors are less likely to take them seriously and give them appropriate diagnoses and medication. This is across all industries. So when you have issues like this that can be systemic, where men just do not take women's issues seriously,
Then I guess they can just vote
You
to
wa-
make them take
well,
them seriously.
well, yes, you
Yeah,
want
and
women
so
involved.
they're gonna vote. So they're gonna vote and say
Sorry.
you need to take me seriously and have men
They're
come
going
in
to
and
have
enforce
to.
my rights.
They're
Have men
going
come in and
to
tell other
have
men they have
to.
to take me seriously.
They're going to have
Big
to,
brain
because
stuff,
you
man.
have to contend with 50% of the population.
Men
yes.
have always contended with 50% of the population. It hasn't been problematic for us to do ever.
Okay, well, when you're running as an elected official and you have a potential to capture 50% of the votes, that is a
Unless they can't
huge-
vote,
That
then
is,
you don't have to worry about it.
Yes, and that's what I'm arguing for. If you're going to have a huge, huge incentive.
Yeah,
to
and then you
appeal
also
to a
end up
female
with
voter base.
disproportionation the other way, right? It's disproportionate the other way. When you get into court, for instance, how do you think you would fare if you got a divorce tomorrow? Do you think that you would do better than your wife?
I have no idea.
Or, I mean, what do you think on average? You think your chances are better than hers of walking away with the fairest deal?
Probably. Yeah.
You think on average that that's true?
I don't know. Like when you're talking like, okay, by the way, when you're talking about like huge alimony payments, shit like that, you're usually talking about really rich people.
Well, no,
When it
I'm not
comes
just talking
to
about rich people. I'm just talking about even dividing up assets when you have lawyers involved. The court favors women overwhelmingly, disproportionately, in fact. And because men are so benevolent, and we are benevolent, we have gone out of our way to kind of pamper women, to keep them away from all the rough and tumble. We keep them away from the hard shit. We keep them away from that. And so most of our laws favor women, to the point that even in the criminal justice system, if it comes to a woman being prosecuted for the exact same crime as a man, the man gets a worse punishment.
yes,
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So we're clearly benevolent. We're clearly pretty fucking benevolent, Richard.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Do you think a woman is going to be more sympathetic to a female criminal than a man is going to be sympathetic to a female criminal?
Doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, I would imagine a female judge is going to be less sympathetic to a female criminal.
You can imagine that all you want, but it's not demonstrated in our courts.
I don't know if it is. I'd have to look up some of the research on that, but I will agree with you. Female criminals are treated better in the criminal justice system. They do get lower sentencing,
even though they're at the complete mercy of the patriarchy.
Well, yes, but
that means the patriarchy, that's pretty compelling evidence the patriarchy is pretty fucking benevolent towards women, Richard.
Well, in that case, in that particular case.
What cases aren't they? They don't log, they don't put up the electrical grid, they don't do the infrastructure, they don't do the auto mechanics, they don't work in the medical fields other than as nurses, but they don't invent most of the technology for that. At what point are you going to look at this and be like, look, men are pretty fucking benevolent.
Doctors.
No, that's not what I said. I said the invention of the equipment in the medical field. Almost all men, almost all engineers for applied science are men. Almost all loggers are men. Your roads are constructed by men. Your infrastructure is constructed by men. Your buildings are constructed by men. Women have very little to do with any of this at all. And they seem to be really fucking benevolent about the fact that they do all of that horrific, brutal fucking work and still give women less punishment for the same crime that men have, because nobody gives a shit about men, including men.
Give me a second. Okay. I would agree that, yeah, men do most of the like hard physical labor. They work more. No, that's true.
Not just hard physical labor, right? When it comes to the invention, even the invention, which is maybe not hard skilled labor, but why do you think that is, that we're in these positions where we're far more likely to die across the board for almost every job? Or suicide rates are through the roof in comparison to women, through the roof.
Well, women are more likely to experience depression and attempt suicide. Men are more likely to actually complete it and be successful.
We're just better at it. You think it's just because men are better at it?
We're
just better at everything, bro. Come on, we're just better at shit.
Well, we are better at committing suicide,
right? Because we're better at everything.
Use a gun. Well, men are more likely to use a gun. Women are more likely to use non-violent means to commit suicide. But
it's because, do you know why that is? It's because most women don't know how to use a fucking gun.
No, it's because women prefer less violent means of suicide. But anyway, the point I'm making is, if you allow like 50% of the population to be involved in the political system, you're going to see a benefit for that portion of the population. Like, well, there's a reason why we want representation in our democratic system. So like there are female specific problems that I don't think a lot of men either understand or care about.
What?
I don't know. Okay, like women have their own sorts of priorities, interests. Like childcare, I'm sure, is a big one.
Men don't understand the interest in childcare. Like, how
Well,
dumb do
they
you think
do.
men
They
are?
might not have as much of an
Well,
interest.
I got to ask you this. How stupid do you think men who you just conceded create the entire infrastructure for which women live in, but yet somehow we don't have the capacity to understand that there could be specific women's issues that need to be addressed by us? Because it seems like we know that just fine. And we seem to be very benevolent when we even hand out judgment towards women. We almost seem to infantilize them or infantilize them. Sorry, infantilize them, right? We treat them
Okay,
like almost babies. Like
if
if you beat up a man and a man beats up a man and they do the same amount of damage, the woman just kind of walks and the dude, he gets put in fucking prison.
okay, we're going to if we're going to just say they shouldn't have any sort of political say because we understand them well enough anyway, like is that an argument for a
Well,
monarchy?
no,
Like
no, no,
a
no.
monarchy would understand
Nope.
the needs of the
It's
population,
actually a
right?
straw man. My argument is that they only have a say anyway because we give them one. They
Yes.
only can vote anyway because we give
Yeah,
them one. So
okay.
it's always an appeal to men, no matter
Okay.
what.
Okay, I'll agree to that. I
Well,
don't
then
care.
there's nothing more to discuss.
The point is this would still be in your interest if you care about protecting women and women's issues. So you would have an interest in allowing women to vote if you have an interest in making sure women are well treated in society.
Okay, but seemingly women are very well treated in society, even though they live under a patriarchy, right?
For the most part, but
Yeah.
again, there are specific for the most part.
So
But
where
there
are
are
all these crazy fucking like
again,
Mad Max men on the back of cars with playing their fucking metal guitar with their guns, just waiting to enslave them? They don't exist, bro. They've never existed. Men
okay,
don't treat women like that.
okay, should black people have never been granted a right to vote? Because again, after the abolition of slavery, you could argue, well, compared to at least other countries, black people are treated fairly well, right?
Every single time this comes up, men give men rights. Men gave
Well, we
men
didn't need to give
rights.
black people rights.
And if you reverse that, men wouldn't have needed to give white people rights if it was the roles were reversed. It doesn't matter which way you cut it. The difference is that blacks in certain instances took up arms and they fought off slavers and they literally had wars against entire plantations.
So did women.
They didn't.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, go ahead and name them.
What?
Name the great
She
woman
was-
slave uprising of
she-
never fucking happened, Richard.
What the fuck? Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman ran the Underground Railroad. She was
Yeah, and
not
she
a
murdered
combatant.
people.
She was
She
not
killed
fighting.
people. She killed people. She was
I don't even know
known
if
for
she
fucking
killed
killing
people. I don't even think she did. I don't even think that
did.
that's correct. Yeah, she go ahead and show me she did.
She at least was accused of it, but she was known for having killed slavers. So
That sounds like okay. Well, I mean, whatever. Even if she did, she killed 2 slavers or 4. Let's say she killed 20. Let's say she was the Terminator with a rifle and she just like mowed down 20 slavers. So fucking what? The slave uprisings were men. They were men. And their men were the ones who fought in the wars, which is what essentially from the revolution on, black soldiers were always in the front line. It was one of the ways that they demonstrated that they were the equal to white soldiers. They would, in World War II, blacks would line up knowing that the army was going to segregate them because they wanted to demonstrate that they were just as good as the white soldiers. Men can give themselves rights. They can take themselves out of bondage. Women can't do it.
yeah, I'm looking this up. Apparently, there's a woman named Emmeline Pankhurst who is a women's suffragette who killed 5 people. But in any case, this isn't about whether women would take up violent arms. Like, this is about your interest.
Then who enforces their rights?
Sorry?
Then who enforces their rights if they're not going to take up violence?
Well, men do, just like how men.
Then that's it. That's the end of it, bro. Yes, that's right. Black men enforce black rights.
Okay,
that's correct.
So I'm just wondering. You're saying if somebody has good enough placing in society where they're not, for the most part, getting abused, mistreated, you would not really be in favor of granting them rights because who cares?
No, that's incorrect.
Well,
now you're moving into an ought. from the descriptor of what's true. So we just been arguing over whether or not the descriptor is true. And in this case, we can't even agree on the descriptor, except we just finally did, where you finally conceded, yes, all of everybody's rights comes from men. And it's like, okay, if we could concede on that descriptor, then I think we can move on to the aughts. Can you concede that that's true finally? That all rights for all people at all times come from men?
I don't entirely agree on that, but
well, then if we don't agree on the descriptor, we need to get
I'm
back
saying
to why the
I don't
descriptor's wrong.
entirely. Well, these are two unrelated. Like they're loosely related. I don't entirely agree on that, but I'd say for the most part, sure. Most rights are granted or enforced by men.
Name one that's not.
Well, again, women make up 50% of society. They have enough, even if they can't be, for the most part, a physical threat, because they make up 50% of society. I'm sure some rights are made in the interest of women
by men.
Yes,
but so you're just back to square one. What right? This is my question to you, and I've asked it to you multiple times. Name a right women give themselves.
I mean, like, I don't even understand how this is.
That's not granted to them by men. But men give themselves rights. They can grant themselves rights.
Like, it's just a weird thing to say. Like, name one. Like,
I don't care how weird it sounds.
This division. I could make this division on any basis. Name one right that gingers give themselves. Well, like. Ginger people,
if they're men and they live in Scotland, they can give themselves rights.
Well, again, you're just arbitrarily making.
Like, I don't think it's arbitrary. I think it's a deductio. It's just a deductio. So I'm just deducing that men seem to be the foundation for all rights because they're the enforcement arm. You haven't made a single argument yet for how that's not true. You just agree and say, but I don't fully agree, but you can't tell me the portion that you don't fully agree with. What is the portion you don't fully agree with? What is it?
Well, you're making this like strange arbitrary separation between sex or gender when you could make this separation in any way. You can make gingers and non-gingers. Like it's just a little strange. And I mean, yeah, most political systems are for the most part run by men. So when you're talking about what gets enacted into law, yeah, it's going to be men for the most part who pass these laws, but at least in our society, there are women who are involved in the political system and have
because they're allowed to be by men.
Floor. Right. But like, I mean, I don't see a situation where men are all gonna like, get up one morning and say, hey, do you all just want to subjugate women more today and then like kick every woman out of the house floor?
So then the patriarchy is
Marjorie
benevolent.
Taylor Greene.
So then the patriarchy, the patriarchy is benevolent. You're going to concede on that too.
I'm not saying they're benevolent. It's just a weird.
Then why is it that women don't or men don't just get up one morning and enslave all women, even though we could, and we could, and you've admitted that we could. Why don't we do that? Well, isn't it because we're men are benevolent?
Well, I'd say generally speaking, at least in modern society, we have an interest in not like fucking making lives horrible for each other. But
because men are benevolent, we could do it, but we don't.
What men are benevolent? Men are the ones who commit the most amount of violent crimes.
Wouldn't change any facts. Even if men committed 100% of the violent crimes, we could tomorrow, and you would agree with this. Tell me if I'm wrong about this. Let's say 100% of men woke up tomorrow morning and said, we're going to enslave 100% of women. They could. But if women woke up tomorrow morning and 100% of them said, we're going to enslave men, they could not. Do you agree or disagree?
Sure.
But so then the fact that we don't form into monoliths, which has been done all over, by the way, all over the world, it's been done many, many times in history. And even right now, there's some countries which grant no rights to women and they can't do anything. It seems to allude to the fact that, especially in Christian nations, men seem to be pretty fucking benevolent. It's so benevolent, in fact, that we give lesser sentences for the same crimes, dude.
Yeah, so, like, again, that's one particular circumstance where women are benefited. And again, you're, like, I would say, if you're talking about a public scenario where, like, I don't know, some drunk, dumbass bitch woman hits a man, versus like same person hits a woman, you're probably going to see like a woman beat up the other woman, right? Like I'd say a woman is probably more likely to be comfortable in engaging in a fight with another woman versus a man engaging in a fight with a woman. So, like, again, when you include more women in the political and legal system, you might see those sorts of biases go away, where women are granted like this extra leniency because men think women are like fucking stupid 12-year-old children who shouldn't be held accountable. Or again, men have certain biases. Like, we like pretty girls. If you see a pretty criminal, that's going to have a greater bias than if you see an ugly criminal. And actually, you've seen this played out quite a few times in high-profile female abuse cases, where you can look up some of these stories. Pretty young female teacher rapes a male student. She gets off with a slap on the wrist. I've seen ugly fat chicks who were older
because
teachers.
nobody cares about men, man. And here,
Well,
I mean,
no,
like,
it's not
and
that
here's
it's not that nobody cares about men. The point I'm making is
Men don't care.
men have specific biases, and if you include more women in these political and legal systems, you're going to see some of these biases go away, and you're going to see a bit of a flattening.
all it shows
of,
again is our benevolence. You haven't made
No, it doesn't.
you
No,
haven't
no,
made
it
an
doesn't. All
argument
you're
about
doing
how
is
we're
pointing
not
out a
benevolent.
bias.
In fact, even
How
when
is it benevolent
women
to
are
let a
committing the
criminal go
same
through?
crime of assaulting children, we still are
How
so
is it-
benevolent that
How
we
is
don't.
that an act of benevolence to let a criminal basically walk with a slap on her wrist? That's
Well,
not
it's
a
an act of
benevolent action.
benevolence towards the criminal. Wouldn't you agree?
No, that's
No, it's
so
not an act.
when you're
It's an
talking
act of malevolence towards the criminal. What do you mean?
Well, that's a decision that would favor the interest of the criminal, but I wouldn't call that a benevolent action.
Well, what else would you call it?
You could say it would be in the best interest of the criminal to
Yeah.
be rehabilitated or taken away from society.
So we're benevolent towards women, which is my entire
No.
point again and again. How's that not being
No.
benevolent towards women? Of course it
No.
is. Like here,
No.
I'll demonstrate this. I want you to, with a straight face, because I don't believe that you can do it, tell me that you believe that it's the same exact thing when a 15-year-old has sex with a 20-year-old, hot teacher, and a 15-year-old girl has sex with a 20-year-old male teacher, that you believe that this affects both of them the same way.
Okay, so 15-year-old student, male, female, 20-year-old teacher, male, female.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, and you believe it affects them the same way. Go ahead and lie to me. Tell me you think it does. Yeah. I already know, bro. Like, I know, you know, PF Young knows, like we all know.
I would say in general, no, it doesn't affect them the same way.
Right.
It doesn't mean men and women shouldn't be held to the same standards, or it's not harming the victim.
That I agree with. So I think that's justice.
If you have an interest in holding men and women to the same standards, again, it would benefit you to include men and women in the legal and political system, because again, if you have a male judge who has a bias for liking pretty girls, and he sees a pretty 20-year-old who's accused of, graping a male student, he's less likely to take that seriously compared to a woman who doesn't have that bias for pretty girls.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's just kind of like, that's just baked into the hypothetical as being a truism. So I would concede that's true, but I don't think it really contends with the point that when you're talking about their right to vote, I just kind of still need you to concede that not only do we give them the right to do that, but we're also pretty benevolent to them after they have the right to do that. And we don't take the right away. And there's no rights. There are no rights out there that women as a collective body give themselves or given to them by men. And you kind of have said, I kind of tangentially agree or disagree with that, or I kind of in some ways disagree with that, but I haven't actually seen the disagreement yet.
Like, I mean, you could say the same thing about Black people, disabled people. There are minority groups who have no ability
you
to
couldn't
say
but you couldn't say that about Black people, because Black men have fought for their own rights, and they have been successful in many cases physically.
No, they haven't.
Yes, they have.
No, the only reason slaves were free was because of the Civil War.
I'm not talking about just slavery, which was a Well, I mean, I think at first, if there had been slave rebellions, they would have been able to do it. But later on, there was a number issue. But even if you go to the British Empire, the British fought with the Zulu tribes. The Zulu
And they got
tribes,
absolutely decimated.
after they won victory after victory. So the thing is, though, is that they were still able to fight. They were still able to cause a problem. They were still able to
No,
do
they weren't.
something to enforce their rights.
No, they weren't.
Yeah, they
The
were.
only
The
reason-
females, the women. Where was the women Zulu warriors? Where were they, bro?
The only reason the Zulu were able to have some small victories was because the British didn't use machine guns because they thought it was ungentlemanly. That's it. once they just used machine guns, they were absolutely fucking decimated.
Yeah, they were devastated by other men's technology. I get it, but where were the women who were rushing the British with spear in hand and shield in hand, willing to die to grant themselves rights?
Well, look at fucking World War II Russia. You know how many women there was? Even the fighting girlfriend tank commander. So, like, what are you talking about?
They were outliers.
They weren't outliers.
They were outliers.
They weren't outliers.
Yeah,
There
in
were
comparison to the
many.
Russian, to the Red Army, which was comprised of 90 or 95% men. They had some female snipers. They had some female espionage agents. And females are great for espionage in the military, but they're not great as fighters. And
Well,
that's the whole problem with
it's-
enforcement, bro.
Well, it's kind of interesting you say that too, because you don't think, say, espionage or building machinery. A lot of women were working in these factories. Like, you don't.
They
think
weren't
that's
building
part-
machinery. That's not correct.
Well, they
Here's
were.
what happened. No, they weren't.
Well, they didn't design the machinery, but
Not
they
only
were,
that,
they were building equipment.
No, they worked in a process that was invented by men, a factorial process. It was invented by men. They stood on a line and they put a fucking part on a bomb. That's what they did. They weren't inventing new military technology. They weren't inventing new factories. They weren't inventing new tanks. They weren't inventing new fucking nothing. They were sitting on a line and they were putting a screw in a pack, bro.
Okay,
That's what they were doing.
Okay, but again, the main we keep getting back to this, but the main point I'm making is, if you have an interest in ensuring the well-being of, say, women or children or somebody who doesn't have much political power, you would have an interest in allowing them to be part of the political system, because again, they can make political decisions and vote in a way in which that protects or benefits them.
I don't feel like you've demonstrated that.
I don't know how the hell I haven't demonstrated that. Like, what is the interest that you have in voting?
Well, me personally, I don't think that voting is even the best system, to be honest with you.
Well, technically,
but I think that it's a patriarchal system now, and that it's necessarily always going to be a patriarchal system, and that extending the right to women to vote.
Well, wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait, why do men have an interest in voting?
Oh, well, so many men don't have an interest in voting. But if you're just talking about why is it that like the normal Joe goes and votes, it's because they think that it's going to affect some sort of change that they want to see that's nonviolent.
So why would you not grant that to women? Like,
yeah,
if you're
but whether we granted it to women or not, it's kind of beside the point. It's if we granted it to women, what are these huge distinctions in society you think you would see that are worse?
Sorry. Okay, well, you could say that would be true of men. So
yeah, that's right. Except that men could change that system and women can't. That's my whole point.
Okay, but
so if men feel like it's unequally yoked, they can be like, "Fuck you."
This would apply to men as well. So please explain to me.
Well, it doesn't.
What would change?
It doesn't apply to men.
It would apply to men.
Which thing would apply to
voting?
Men?
If you're going to say voting doesn't benefit women, then why would it benefit men?
So here's the thing. It benefits men unless men decide they no longer want to vote and they just want there not to be a vote anymore. And then they decide a brand new system. So if the men decide they want communism, there's going to be communism. They decide they want it to be socialism, is going to be socialism. Capitalism is going to be capitalism. Women can't do that. That's the distinction. You understand?
It doesn't matter if they can or can't do that.
Well, I think it does because their vote's a farce.
You haven't explained. If you're going to say women don't have the benefit when it comes to voting, then how could men have the benefit when it comes to voting?
Well, I'm saying they could both have the benefit, but only one of them can actually affect change if it's bias or there's problems or there's any issue, and that's going to be the men. So it's still men granting. It's just men
are you
granting.
saying
It's just still men granting them the rights, voting or not voting, whether
are
they vote or they don't vote. They're
are you
still at the
saying
mercy of
there's
men.
no benefit to voting for anybody?
I mean, I guess in you mean like in current democratic systems?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely benefit probably in voting in current democratic systems. What's your point?
So then why wouldn't you allow women if you agree voting is a benefit?
Well, it's a benefit to men who are in charge of the patriarchal structure because they implemented voting. Women didn't implement that. They were granted that. And then as we see they've been granted that, they can't actually enforce it for themselves. Men have to enforce it on their behalf.
And right there, we are at an hour and a half. And I will just say I'm very glad I did not have to step in at all.
By the way, that
Excellent.
was a super fun debate, dude. Thanks for coming on, man. I enjoyed
no
it.
problem.
Enjoyed it a lot.
Me as well. And I had to do the hardest part, moderate. We're going to go into the Q&A section now. And then we'll do that for an hour and a half. And then we'll do closing statements. Is everyone on board with that?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
if
sure.
you guys want to call, remember that PF is here as a guest moderator, but he has control of how this is going to go. I'm just bringing callers on and off. There are super chats, and PF, you can see those have all been marked under the starred. As callers fill up, if you hop in the Discord, Zen Shapiro will get you a link, or Rachel will get you a link, and then you can call in. We already have some callers in the background, but PF, if you want to start with the super chats, that would be appreciated.
Sure. I cannot pull them up on screen.
I'll pull them up for you. Don't worry.
Okay.
Just start reading.
Oh, excellent. I have the easiest job. All right. Yukon Cornelius, $4.99. Yukon Gaines, would you mind defining...
wait, you know what? We didn't get closing statements, bro.
I thought we do closing statements after Q&A.
No. We do closing statements, then we go to Q&A.
Okay. Well, we'll do closing statements and then go to Q&A. So
okay. Well, I'm gonna give Richard the last word because he opened. So I'll go ahead and close first. So surprisingly enough, or maybe not surprisingly, for most of the people in the audience, myself and Vegan Gaines honestly didn't have that much to disagree about. I think that he basically agrees that everything I'm saying is descriptively true. And I think if we moved into the aughts from that, he would kind of have to concede on many of those too. And as we got into some of those, he basically ended up conceding on many of them. I do think he was a great sport for coming on. And I always like to engage with him. He's always been good on the Crucible. I don't know. There's all these fucking people who are like, Richard's gonna cause all kinds of. He's always been a great sport here. I don't know what the fucking problem is, but anyway, so I think descriptively he essentially agreed with everything that I said, and he couldn't really give me a counter argument on any of the things that I pushed him on. So, as it stands right now, until I hear good counter arguments or I hear really good alternative descriptors, I would have to say that the worldview that I espouse is 100% correct. Until I hear arguments to the contrary, that's really all I have on my closing. And just to thank my opponent again for so graciously coming on, I appreciate that very much.
All right. Well, as far as my closing statement, so Andrew's sort of right. I do agree with him to some extent that, yeah, like ultimately, it is like a man's world, so to speak. If men as a collective decided to take away all women's rights, sure, we could do that. We hold more power in society. We have more guns, I guess. The thing is, though, what I don't agree with on that point is that both men and women are involved in the political system, whether it be democratic or otherwise. There are women who are involved in, say, violent uprisings. There are women who are involved in warfare. So I don't totally agree with his point. But I do mostly agree there. But what interests me more is if we do have an interest in benefiting most members of society or protecting, say, vulnerable groups of people, like women, children, what have you, we should try to include them in our political and legal system. It not only gives them the ability to influence political and legal changes that benefit them, but I think it can also benefit us as well. It does help to remove certain biases from these systems. It introduces new perspectives that may be better than our own. So I think we shouldn't really focus too much on whether or not somebody's big and strong enough and has a big gun to fight and I don't know, overtake the government if it becomes tyrannical. I think we should also consider, what people can, what certain people can do, women included, when we add them to the political system, let them vote, and allow them to not only make decisions that can benefit them and protect them in particular, but could also benefit us in some ways. There you go.
That's
Excellent.
where PF Young says, appreciate that closing statement very much.
Excellent. Well, we do things a little bit differently on the Crucible. And
We do
appreciate that
things a
closing
little
statement.
differently on the Crucible.
Yes.
So as we go through these, the moderator can participate. That's fine. The debate is considered closed. We're going to start by going through super chats. After we get done with the super chats, we will move over to callers. We do it in that order because these are essentially paying customers. And you callers, while we appreciate you, we do want to take care of the super chats first. So go ahead, PF, when you're ready.
Yes. Vegan Gains, would you mind defining what a woman is? Are there any biological markers? Follow up. Did you say you would a trans woman a while back?
So, women, a woman, I'd say, can have two definitions. Could be somebody who is born with sex characteristics that are female, both primary and secondary, or it could be a person that was born with a male sex at birth who decides to transition and adopts enough physical traits that are aligned with what is typically found or seen in the female sex. So yeah, there are biological markers for what a woman is, but you don't necessarily need all of those biological markers. I would say if you have enough characteristics that are associated with a female and you choose to identify as a woman, it would be fine to recognize that person as a woman. And would I have sex with a trans woman? Possibly. Like, I'm married now to a cis woman, but if I found somebody attractive enough, then sure, I wouldn't have a problem necessarily.
Great. Thanks for that. Made by Jim Bob. The classic, the original presuppositionalist. Andrew, if the disparity of strength between men and women is true, why is there a dramatic increase of testicle injuries in women's sports?
Well, see, there's a good explanation for this. It just so happens that Owen Benjamin has sex with men. That's it. That's my entire explanation for that. That's all I have, honestly.
Epic.
Yeah.
Up the next one. DHHS data, Department of Health and Human Services data, shows that 70.6% of children were abused by their mothers, 29.4% by their fathers. No question, but perhaps something interesting to comment on.
Well, I'm going to be maximum charitable here. I don't expect Vegan Gains to know this off the top of his head. But the argument usually back the other way is that, well, yeah, but this is because there's a lot more single mothers. And this is why you would kind of expect to see that. But that kind of goes against Vegan Gains' earlier argument about per capita. And if you increase the pool, you have different likelihoods, right? But that's usually what the feminist argument back is. So I would say, unless he wants to kind of retract what he said on per capita, he would just kind of have to agree that this stat is true.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the stat, but assuming it's true, the discrepancy may be related to not only single motherhood, but mothers in general may spend more time with their children. So it's possible that you just see, because there's more interaction between children and their mothers, you just see higher rates of abuse. What Andrew said, though, it has nothing to do with per capita rates. It's just that if you were to say control for that confounding variable, of time spent with children, you may see it go the other way, where fathers are more likely to abuse their children.
Well,
But I have
then,
no idea.
well, then the
In
per
it-
capita rates would change. That's the whole point. That's what I'm saying. So it's like,
Well,
you know what I mean? Then the per capita rates would change if you introduce a new control. Then we would have different per capita rates.
well, no, it would just control for that confounding variable. Like you're talking about
Then how would that
percentages
not
here,
be
not per
a
capita rate.
Well, I mean, wait a second. What do you think that variable there is? It's saying that 70.6% of children were abused by their mothers, 29% by their fathers. What do you think that this is? Do you think that this is do you think that this stat is untrue? Can you account for it, or?
I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm just saying I haven't looked at the stat, and one of the confounding variables may be that women just spend more time with their children, thus you see higher rates of abuse among women. But in any case, I would still say 30% is a very high amount, 1 in 3, basically.
Well, then doesn't it logically follow that if you control for a new variable, whatever the per capita stats are going to be, are going to significantly change?
You mean at like children that are like how likely you are to be abused by your father versus mother?
Yeah, that would have to be true. Once you introduce a new control and you have new data, the per capita rates are going to have to change.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. This was the next one, the unconventional man.
That was the one we just looked at.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You should be. Vegan, this is not an attack against you, but a criticism of how you debate. Excellent. Worth the $10 for advice. Your evidence, in my opinion, is one-dimensional. Your entire case seems to rest on trying to get Andrew to support a particular kind of fruit.
No, my argument was based on the idea that Andrew has an interest in, protecting women, children, or improving their lives in some way. And a very easy way to do that is to grant them some amount of political power by voting. It didn't have only to do with grape. It could be anything.
Right. And kind of my counter to that is, but we were pretty benevolent to women even before this. So even before they had the right to vote. I don't see how their right to vote has, I don't see. That's the thing, is like, if he could actually demonstrate for me something that was specific to women, that they needed the right to vote because men just weren't going to grant it to them, and this was some right that that men thought that they should have, which they wouldn't have it now if men didn't think they would have it. I'd like to hear what that is.
Well, I'd have to think about that a little more, but
Okay.
I think just logically that makes sense to me.
Got it.
Cool. Did that come through on your end? Because I think that was donated on my live stream. Does it filter into the same thing?
Yeah, they all filter in the same.
Wow.
We want to get all the questions in, regardless of if you're supporting Paul, who did a great job moderating. Highly suggest you go send him a super chat. He deserves one.
Thank you. Made $5 tonight. So a Saturday night well spent. There's been a reduction in fruits over time because there has been unified men, maybe unified men to enforce the women's right, including evidence, etc.
Yeah, so that is true. You could also argue there has been a greater interest in reducing grapes because women have had voting rights and political power to increase that interest. And on top of that, women have also been allowed to join the police force and law enforcement. And if you have more women in law enforcement roles, you're probably going to see a greater interest in enforcing and solving these crimes. So you could also make that argument.
Seems reasonable. Circle G, the sequel to Circle K, has become a YouTube member. Congratulations. Welcome to the the club. Frankie D for 19.99, a good year.
Huge super chat, by the way. Thank you very much for supporting the Crucible. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Sociology, in my opinion, is not a hard science because it attempts to diagnose infinitely complex problems such as, quote, rates of abuse, which have potentially infinite factors involved. Not to mention the definition of abuse. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
If you want me to go first. Yeah, so people use the sort of critique against literally any field of science practically. You're going to find confounding variables in nutrition and drug research too. The amount of confounding variables just due to the fact that you're dealing with multiple human bodies that can react to different medications in different ways is also tremendous. Just because there's confounding variables involved doesn't mean you can't control for these variables. And if you have a significant enough data pool, you can make statistically significant and meaningful correlations. Doesn't mean it's not, like, I don't know what he means by hard science, but it doesn't mean it's not a valid or useful science.
So science, in my opinion, is only as useful as the controls which are put in place, which is how you know something is methodologically correct. I've used it my entire career, applied science anyway, even without knowing really that this was the scientific method, but it's always based on controls. The reason it's a soft science, sociology, and the reason that medicine is a soft science is specifically because there is such a higher rate of variables that you can't control for. The data you get is mostly incorrect, which is why when we look, and we can look at this, at the replication crisis, the two fields which are the most affected are the medical field and sociology. And it's because it has to do with these human variables that you can't control for, which is why most data that people think is true when it comes to human behavior is absolutely false.
Cool. Frankie D, 999. 999. This is for vegan gains, I presume. Just wanted to send some love your way, bro. I disagree with your worldview, but at the end of the day, what matters is the state of the soul. Keep seeking truth, and truth may know you. Did one of my fans send that in? That is an enlightened centrist super chat, if I've ever seen one. Nice job, Frankie. Vegan, do you have anything to say?
No, just thanks.
Dylan, thank you for the support of PF Young International Media. Appreciate it, Dylan. Your investment will pay off. Andrew's assertion that men show, quote, benevolence by not enslaving women is laughable. Shots fired, as is his claim that men could simply take women's rights away. Guns, the simple fact of 150 million jobs lost. Lol.
Oh, no, I never thought about that. Wait, there's a potentiality that women could use guns? I never thought about the fact that, well, it takes attrition to win any sort of conflict, and men are better equipped to deal with the elements. We can carry far more weight. We can use far better guns, not to mention the fact that we're in control of the entirety of the infrastructure. Let's not even add on to that the fact that we're the only ones equipped to use modern military technology. But on top of that, just being maximum charitable to you. If they took to the street with guns tomorrow, right? Hand to hand is the basis of all combat, right? What was the old Metal Gear saying?
No.
Only a fool trusts his life to a weapon, they say. But the most important, it's a joke. I'm obviously trying to joke around, right? But what I'm saying is that we have complete control of everything. And you have to have machines to build guns. And I got to tell you, the amount of gun makers who are female who are on this planet is almost zero. It literally almost zero. The amount of women who can create these types of weapons, to even if you were to have like sides, it's not even close. It's absurd to say that women could just grab guns and take their rights tomorrow. It's never been done anywhere. However, it's been done by men successfully time and time and time and time again. So I think it's ridiculous.
I'd like to say, I'd like to add to that. I think it's ridiculous to think that men would, I don't know, just one day decide to take away all women's rights and enslave them. Like, men can't reproduce, so like we need to rely on women.
We
to
can
keep
with
society
enslaved
going.
women. We can reproduce fine with
Well,
enslaved women. What do you mean? Why couldn't
sure,
we?
I suppose, but like the idea that you're gonna have all men on the planet have an interest in enslaving women, graping them, just so that you can make, just to reproduce, so you can have society still exist, and have enough men that have an interest in murdering like so many women. I also don't think that's
Why would they have
a
to
likely
murder them?
possibility.
They just carry them off as prizes of battle, like they've always done.
Well, try doing that if a woman has an AR-15.
I mean, well, how would a woman oppose that if you have 50 men who have M60s and can actually use them? You know what I mean?
Well, you're not
Like,
going to
this is
subdue somebody with an M60. You're going to kill them.
well, I mean, I think that they're far more
True.
likely to surrender if they're surrounded by men with M60s. That's what I'm saying. It's like you can still always the pool on violence is going to be disproportionately on the male end to the point of absurdity. Like it's
I-
never going to be close. You
I
can't
mean,
really
you
you can't really believe any other way.
If we're gonna make these hypotheticals, well, men could do this. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, hypothetically, women could just refuse to surrender.
No, I mean men do this. And women
Well, right,
don't do
but-
that. Women don't fight back. Women don't take their rights. Women
look
don't
at the look at the
that.
mass mutinies in Russia. So,
Mass mutinies by women.
well, by men.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Mass mutinies by men giving themselves rights because they don't like whatever the pool was that they were granted. They decided to change their rights, and they did. Women don't do this. They can't do this.
Right. So, wouldn't that give them more motivation to like fight to the death?
Well, not historically. Historically, they were just carried off like luggage.
Okay. Well, this is also before AR-15s.
No, it wasn't
existed,
before
yeah.
AR-15s. They're carried off like luggage right now when you have warring countries inside the Middle East. Still happens.
I
Alright.
have a question for Andrew. I don't know if he's heard this. I have heard, I don't know if it's true, that women are actually better at, men are obviously better at virtually every sport, but women are better apparently at like ultra long distance and then also shooting, I've heard. Is that true?
They can be. It has been noted in the shooting sports that from the prone position, that women tend to do better staying still for longer periods of time. So I don't know. This has been equated to internal monologue that women can stay still for a longer period of time. I don't know if that's true or not, but there has been some demonstration that women can be excellent sharpshooters when trained. I don't dispute that. I don't dispute there's exceptional women. I don't dispute that one day we'll have our first woman Navy SEAL. I don't dispute any of that. I just think it's totally irrelevant.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
think all the world record holders for like ultra distance swimming are women. So I don't know why that would be, but yeah.
The Unconventional Man, $20. Another large contribution support for the Crucible.
Which we appreciate.
Yes, I would say thank you, but Andrew does not pay me. Vegan Gains, your response to mothers abusing their children because they spend more time with their kids. Your response to mothers abusing their children is because they spend more time with their kids. Let's say if a man says, well, do you know how much time I spend with my wife? How would you expect me not to abuse her? Lol.
That is actually the case. When you see, well, because of the pandemic, you've seen an increase in couples spending more time together, and you have seen much higher rates of abuse and police calls to deal with domestic abuse. So like that is like I mean, it just makes sense. If you're in an abusive relationship and you don't get along very well, and then you're forced to cohabitate more, you are going to see abuse go up. So yeah.
Lastly, Small Fry, also another contribution to PF Young International. With this amount of capital seeding, we will be global soon enough. Thank you, Small Fry. Andrew, as you know, some patriarchal societies today make it difficult for women to vote. Afghanistan, Do you think women are better or worse off in those societies?
I don't think it's their ability to vote that makes them worse off. I think that it's the ethical system of the religious foundations of fundamentalist Islam that makes them worse off, not the vote. I don't think the vote has anything to do with it. That if you're in a society literally filled to the brim with people who are, in many cases, 2 to 3 times your strength and could easily do horrible things to you, but don't, regardless of if you have laws protecting you or not, shows that it's an ethical benevolence of men. There are some systems which men adhere to, which are not ethical. And we fight over these systems constantly. We go to war with each other. We try to stop each other, all of this type of thing. But I don't think that it's the vote specifically that causes this, rather the religious fundamentalism of Muslims themselves that cause this.
Yeah, so there are Muslim majority societies where women do have at least relatively equal rights to men, like Turkey.
That's true.
It's I think it's like the fact that these societies like Afghanistan, they're not just patriarchal, they're not just like Muslim radicals. They just don't have the democratic principles that we do, where they adhere to that sort of democratic structure where even if they disagree with something, they will abide by the laws and regulations of the land, but instead they just dogmatically follow Islam, and they're willing to just kill people who disagree with them. It's not just that, they believe in Islamic principles.
Yeah, well, I think it is because secular societies also kill people who disagree with them. So I don't know how else it can be anything other than your moral foundation. Secularism is not some moral paradigm just because you say there's no religion involved.
Well, by secularism, you mean just separation of church and state?
Yeah, by secular government, correct. There's
I mean, you could say the CCP is secular, but like in reality, the government itself is essentially a religion. So I don't know. You're kind of splitting hairs there.
I don't think I'm splitting hairs. I think that secular societies, which I think you would argue the United States is supposed to be set up as a secular government, that the United States kills people with wild abandon. They don't give a shit.
You mean other countries?
Yeah, sure. Or well, and its own citizens.
I don't know about its own citizens.
Really? So you don't think that what happened with Floyd was a consequence of the patriarchal United States secular government?
No.
What do you think it was? What do you think caused it?
Well, racism from the police involved.
So secularism can't stop racism?
No, neither can religion.
Right. So my point then is that secularism has no moral high ground against religion, and it's the ethical system and the ethical foundations, which is what's causing the crime and the way that men relate to women and the way men relate to each other.
Well, you can have ethical principles under a secular system. Maybe this is like a debate for another time, though.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
You want to go down that road?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hang on. I'm switching over to the Dono chat side, PF. By the way, everybody, Dono chat's available for anybody to use. I built the entire payment processor for people so that they didn't have to feed on YouTube if they didn't want to. Anyway, go ahead.
Good. YouTube sucks. The Crucible. So I guess Andrew sent himself a chat. $5 and a tenth of a penny.
Yeah.
I'm
going to giving it 1 hour ago. That's all.
Oh.
Yeah.
1 hour ago, I was saying, in honor of this debate, I told my woman to make me hamburger tartare.
To make me a hamburger?
No, hamburger tartare. It's far more sophisticated.
And I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind having you back because I know that you do a lot of vegan debates, and we haven't done one. And I know that that's more your wheelhouse. I wouldn't mind having you back for a vegan debate with me if you would like to at some point.
People have been asking for round 3 with Zen Shapiro, so
we can do it. We can do it. I'm happy to get Zen Shapiro on here.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not allowed to moderate any debate that Zen's in.
I'll moderate the fucking debate. I'm always fair.
It'll immediately.
Go ahead, man.
51 minutes ago. Orthodox.
$5. Yeah.
Oh, yes, $5. 51 minutes ago. Orthodox Armenian. No message entered by user. A
Yeah,
man of
just
few words.
showing support for the Crucible because he's awesome. Appreciate that very much. We know you callers have been waiting patiently. We're gonna get through the super chats.
$4, 45 minutes ago. Circle G Man VG is a mid-tier female debater.
Well, somebody is confused about what a man and a woman is.
More than a few people are nowadays, trust me.
Yeah.
It's fucking mosquitoes in here. It's pissing me off.
Oh, are those the genetically modified ones from Bill Gates?
Dude, I hate
Oh.
fucking mosquitoes more than anything.
Sorry.
Anyway,
I don't
go
know,
ahead.
So-
I don't know if I just broke TOS there. I think I'll get in trouble for pointing that out. Wilhelm Bones for $10 did not say anything, simply flexed support on this fine Saturday night.
Long time supporter of the Crucible. We appreciate it very much. There was a couple other super chats that came in on the YouTube side. Just wanted to show those real quick.
Paul Meyer, great first name. Women can carry more body fat, making them more buoyant, while also providing more insulation conducive for ultra long distance swimming. I don't know if that's true. If it is,
Well, I think he was
Interesting.
saying because Vegan Gains had said that most of the world records for long distance swimming are women, which I had never heard that before. But I think he's giving us the reason because VG said he didn't know the reason.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, that sounds logical.
I trust anyone with the first name Paul. Made by Jim Bob, $4.99. The original presuppositionalist. Andrew, if robots did all enforcement, what would be the argument for male superiority? What would it be insofar as rights/law?
That we build them all. That we build them all and we program them all. And we have complete and total control of all of the infrastructure which builds all of them. So no matter which way you cut it, men are always going to be the enforcers. We're going to be the programmers of the robots. We're going to be the builders of the robots. I work in robotics. That's my field. Do you know how many robotics specialists that I've met, robotics engineers or robotics builders who are women? There are some, I'm not going to lie, there are, but and some of them are actually quite good, but there's not very many. There's not very many. And that field has been open for them for a long, long time. They're just not interested in it. They're interested in other things. That's just, they're just interested in other things because it's a hard-ass, physically intensive job. And they just don't like those jobs. So I don't know. Did you want to say anything about that?
No, I just think if there's going to be like AI and automation kind of in charge of society, I think the argument that men should have more of a say really it really falls flat in a situation like that.
Sorry, there was one more that came through.
Another from the PF Young Media International Consortium. Thank you. Old school. What do you think about NASA wanting an all-woman team to go to Mars? Let's go with Vegan Gains first. What do you think of?
I don't know if they do.
If they did, let's assume that old school. He's coming from my chat, so he's a reliable source. So assume that's true. What do you think of that?
I think that whatever the mission that they're going to be on for whatever elongated state that they're going to be on it, that men would be able to do that mission better. All things equal, that men would be able to accomplish this mission better than the women would. And I'll give you Survivor Island as my my kind of like postulation here. We saw what happened when we had Survival Island. It's not that the women were dying, though they were getting close to it. It's just that the men are fucking engineered for this. We're biologically engineered to do this shit. Just saying.
Yeah, so when you're talking about astronauts, I think women are completely competent to do a mission on their own. I don't see why there'd be a massive difference in capability with space exploration between men and women. And secondly, if you're talking about surviving in space, women are smaller. So when you're in cramped cabins in space, I'd imagine women would be a bit more comfortable because there'd literally be more space for them to move around in. Metabolic requirements would also be lower because they're smaller. so they wouldn't have to eat as more, and ensuring adequate nutrition would be a bit easier. I think the only downside would be it's harder for them to pee in space.
Well, what about their menstrual cycle, or the fact that they're weaker, or the fact that it would probably require a greater amount of strength inside of some type of shuttle?
Men can menstruate too, Andrew. I don't know if you've been on Google recently.
Well, you can just take a pill so that you don't menstruate. So that's kind of easy to deal with.
That's what I do.
And I don't know what amount of strength you really need on a spaceship. I wouldn't imagine it's much since you're weightless.
Well, that would be incorrect. You would still need to have strength. You still have sockets and rivets and fasteners and all sorts of different ththings which go into the mechanics and the machinery of whatever ship you're on, which would require 24-hour maintenance. So these things do require strength regardless of the gravitational pull inside of the spacecraft.
Yeah, but it's not to a degree where it's like you have to pull a 240-pound man out of a damaged tank sort of thing, like in the military.
You ever had a stuck fastener? You ever had a? I mean, seriously, you ever had a stuck fastener? You think that you're going to go get your 5'5"?
Like, dude, there are female astronauts who've done spacewalks, so I don't see it being a big deal.
Well, whether they could accomplish it, I'm not disputing that. Rather, I'm disputing that I think that men, all things equal, would do it better. That's my dispute. Do you disagree with that?
I think it would entirely come down to the individuals you choose, not whether they're male or female.
Yeah, all things equal. So all things equal, except, men have the male physiology, so they're probably going to be stronger and this and that, but all the other environmental factors are equal.
If supposedly there was a big aspect of strength to be on a spaceship, then I suppose men would be better, but I don't think there's a big aspect of strength.
Old school, the gentleman who asked the question, first off, Fallout is an OG game, so he had a great avatar. But he said afterwards that the thinking is women use fewer resources, so the capsule could be lighter. I think Vegan Games pointed that out, lower metabolic requirements. So that could be an advantage.
But it just doesn't matter. You still are inside of an operating machine. And that operating machine is going to have fasteners, and it's going to have problems. It's going to have issues. It's going to have all sorts of things that are going to require something which is strength apt. I just think it's absurd to think anything else. You guys have worked on machines. You know this. Like, I'm not speaking a different language to you, am I?
You got to get a NASA engineer on here for this debate.
I would happily have. I'd love to have a debate with a NASA engineer. But anyway, that's the end of the super chats. PF, do you want me to bring on callers?
No, we're gonna wrap it up right now. Peace, everyone. Just kidding, ladies and gentlemen. The Crucible's wife, who I believe our first interaction was her calling me retarded from doing too many psychedelics. Which, to be honest,
I'm so
may or may
awesome.
not have some truth to that. That's fair. Shoot your question.
Okay, well, I missed the very opening arguments because, as a slave of the patriarchy, I was fetching Andrew his drink, and I missed Vegan Games opening. But Vegan Games, would you say your argument is based on, for women voting, is based on the idea that it's more democratic and provides more liberty if we include women in voting?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, based on that, then I have a question. I don't know if you're aware of this, but anti-suffrage groups for about 40 years prior to the 19th Amendment being passed in the United States actually, very ironically, blocked women's referendums on voting. So they did not want to let women vote on whether or not they wanted the vote. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony both said this was because if we left it up to women, the women would not want the vote. And the only few referendums we had showed that only about 4% of women at the time were interested at all in voting. So is it democratic to shove the 19th Amendment through when women are not the ones who want it?
Yes. Look, granting additional rights to a group.
No, you can't mean that.
Yeah. So Like, look, just because the majority of women say wouldn't want that right, it doesn't mean you're creating an expansion of rights.
But how's that democratic, though? The whole purpose of it is democratic. That would be the opposite of democratic.
Well, that specific action would, I guess, in theory, be non-democratic, but it would be a greater expansion of democracy to allow that group to vote. So
Okay.
I would say
I thought-
ultimately that is democratic.
Yeah, I thought that might be your answer. And then my next question, my follow-up would be, since we have given women the vote, it's been just over 100 years, when women did start voting in larger numbers, we see that they're one of the most closely studied demographics because now they actually make up the majority of voters since about the late 80s in the United States. So every campaign on earth has done tons and tons of studies on what women vote for, why they vote for those things, etc. And we see that women vote overwhelmingly in favor of more and more draconian measures, such as, stricter and stricter gun control, bigger and bigger welfare state, nanny state, security state, things like the Patriot Act. They're generally more in favor of mandating any number of measures. They want higher taxes, etc. So we see that by giving women the vote, you tend to end up with bigger and bigger government and less liberty. Do you feel like it's ironic at all that by giving women the vote, we end up with a less free society?
I don't see that at all. When you mention things like taxes, especially, I mean, you need taxes for wealth redistribution, or else you're going to end up with a huge oligarchy. So I don't see that as being like draconian or big government. If anything, that controls oligarchical power more than anything.
But it doesn't, though, because what about take the Second Amendment, which would be a failsafe against draconian power, right? If women are the ones who are voting against the Second Amendment and men are not, doesn't that kind of make her case for her?
Yeah, so that is a problem, and I am in favor of the Second Amendment. You are seeing an expansion of the Second Amendment in general, if anything, though. So I know there is a big political push to ban guns. In Canada, they were sort of successful, but Trudeau's a fucking cuck, by the way. But
yes. Yeah, we can agree on that.
Common ground. Centrism.
It's retarded beyond belief. But you, like, in the United States, at least, generally speaking, you're seeing an expansion of firearms rights, and you're seeing more women actually get interested in firearms. More women are owning guns than any other time period. So I don't see
I would love to debate you at some point if you were ever interested on whether or not women voting has led to a freer, more democratic society or not. But at the risk of sounding misogynistic, I will say I am also a firearms instructor myself, and I mainly teach women. And most of them need several private lessons just to get over the loud banging noise.
Yeah.
They have to use revolvers or
Really?
have their guns modified. Oh yeah, they have to use revolvers or have their guns
They don't have
modified.
the hand strength for semi-automatic.
Yeah, they don't have the hand strength to operate most semi-automatics
Oh,
or
so
to load them.
they're shooting it in semi-auto? Or
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, any
single action, I mean.
semi. Yes, and
Okay,
they don't.
that's really
They
fucking
generally. It is. Well,
It's just
the average,
hand strength. Like it
Yeah,
actually takes a good
average
amount of hand
grip will-
strength to cock a gun.
modern, like, they're only like 4 or 5 pounds of fucking trigger pressure.
I
for,
know,
like, a
bro.
good handgun.
I know.
It's
Like
so
we know
bad,
this.
though.
We know this.
Yeah.
We know
That's
this.
baffling.
Yeah, at the
Not a
beginning of every
joke.
class, I have to find out if the women can even operate the guns they have. And the biggest problem that they have is actually
Okay.
just loading the magazine. They can't even load the
Yeah,
magazine
well, that
because
is a
the
bitch.
spring is too strong.
To be
Yeah.
fair,
Yeah,
that
so-
is a bit of a bitch, especially in like,
Yeah.
you know, like a 18-round Glock or something. But
That's the point, right? It's like the strength differential alone. I think that when
Well,
people say things like, but women
that-
could have guns, I'm like,
well, dude,
well,
that's not just a strength difference. Like, these have to be women who have, like, either don't work or do desk jobs. Like, they don't do any kind of work with their hands. That's not just.
but that's almost
Yeah.
every woman, bro.
Yeah, that's every woman.
Yeah.
My
They're in the
best friend
service
is
industry.
a
They're in
my best
restaurants and
friend's
they're
an
in clerk work and they're in everything except working with their hands.
You know what? I will say this: like, I used to do personal training a lot, and not too long ago, I was also doing online coaching. I don't think women have some of the strength issues they claim to have too, because I've trained women in person where they're like, "This is way too heavy for me," and if you just tell them you're gonna lift it, just lift it, they can lift it. It
yeah,
just
or if you
feels
don't
hard.
tell them how much it is. Yeah.
It's the
So
same
I
thing.
don't
Yeah, same
know.
thing with guns. Same thing with
So I don't
guns.
know how much of that is them saying, "Oh, I can't even pull the trigger," or like they just won't squeeze it hard enough. You know
Right,
what I mean? Like,
I guess that's kind of my point, because me being a woman, and I've done strength sports, weightlifting, powerlifting for 16 years now, and I shoot, and my grip strength is actually 20 pounds stronger than the average man.
yeah,
But the average woman's grip strength, I want to say, is something like 40 pounds per hand. But
okay,
yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot of it is psychological and just getting them over the fear of everything, and it's really
yeah,
tough to do. So I just don't think it's likely that we're going to see women just picking up arms and overtaking the men, because you have to remember,
sure,
like when you guys were talking about the military, the women in the military can't beat the men in the military.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I'd
all
agree with
right,
that.
well, that's all for me.
Thank you,
All right.
Rachel. Thanks for coming on. We'll see you next time. We have the improperly spelled Greek city.
Can I quickly run something about the long distance swimming before I ask Andrew the question?
Sure.
I'll allow it.
So no, that's not the reason. Ultra endurance athletes don't have a high enough body fat percentage for average weight for a body fat to matter. Only one of the records, or one of the major records, is held by a woman. Most aren't held by women. One of the main reasons is just not a fleshed out sport. Some of the records are still standing since 1937. It's not done enough.
Where's the trans flag, bro?
Well,
it fell down apparently.
in
Leave it there.
ultra long distance swimming in particular, or are you just talking about like running? I know there's
ultra
those
long distance
crazy...
swimming and ultra marathons as well have the same issue, where you see like most of the
yeah.
records being held by people in their 30s and 40s well past their athletic peak.
I'd agree with the running for sure, because there's some fucking races that last for 3 days. Like, they're fucking stupid. Nobody's gonna do that. So I'd agree with that. The swimming, I'm not so sure. You might have a point there,
are like
but
6 days too.
Are you sure? Because I know there's some
swimming.
Well, I know there's some, like, you're talking about swimming like across a lake or something and having to rest like on one side, or what?
I know the 6-day record is as far as I know, is something around a little over 1,000 kilometers for men and 800 for women, or I might be thinking of endurance running.
Yeah, because you can't sleep in the water. Like, you'll die. So I know some.
Hours?
Yeah, I know some of those swimming records, they last for almost 24 hours. I think some of them might even be a little more, where you have to swim constantly for like literally a full day.
Gentlemen, I don't mean to cut in, but this is totally
Yeah,
irrelevant,
sure. Yep.
and we have other callers going behind.
So the main question is going to be towards Andrew then. For when we look at then, if we just grant all the descriptive and we look at the prescriptive, do you think that if we allow having women to vote, we're going to more accurately be able to address women's issues than if they're not allowed to vote?
No.
You don't think having those groups be able to have political power is going to more accurately help them address the issues that they feel are...
I don't think so. I think because there's just still appealing to men, no matter what. It's always just an appeal to men to enforce whatever the
appeal to
baseline
enforce is going to be, but to be able to bring their issues to that appeal.
Yeah, but they can bring the issues to the appeal whether they vote or not. In fact, I would argue the opposite. I would say that if men had the only right to vote, that they would probably do a lot better for women's issues than women do.
I think that would just be inherently faulty. You're going to
it can't be, Corinth, because look at the courts. The courts are the prime example. Right now, you wouldn't argue that we're not in a patriarchal system, and yet the courts are biased towards women, even with male judges and with male juries and with males in general. Even the situation of the 16 or 15-year-old girl with the 20-year-old male teacher and the 15-year-old boy with a 20-year-old male teacher. You and I have discussed this. We understand that there's like a difference there, whether we can point it out, maybe not, it's not just, but there's a difference. It seems like men kind of go out of their way to be super benevolent towards women, and even did before women had the right to vote. We seem to cherish them, love them, care a whole lot about them. We don't seem to just be martyrs who go through and just like, pillage and rape and all this. That just seems absurd to me.
Like,
Yeah, I
by the
don't
way,
think so.
on the 15-year-old, 20-year-old teacher thing, like, we may have that opinion because of our own biases.
It's true.
Like, I don't know if women would think the same way.
Yeah, we generally overly infantilize women. That's why we
Yeah.
send to see these things.
So
And I'm
that's
not
what I'm
saying that-
saying is like maybe we're actually better better at dealing with the women's issues even than they are. We've always
Well,
seemed to be
better.
very
I think
benevolent.
we're going to be looking at a specific set of those issues. So one of the things
Which
we're going to see
ones?
the issues where we're going to say these people are going to be like less capable.
Give
so
me a
if they're
fucking issue. Don't give me
Okay,
generalizations.
you went with the courts. That's going to be signed with infantilization. That's going to show. Another thing that we're going to see downstream of that is we're going to then not allow women into certain fields that they would qualify.
So you want women to have the right to vote so they suffer more?
I think
Well,
that if
it's
it's
not suffering
if it's
more.
fair,
Like, that's
yeah,
what
I
you're
think
saying, right?
if that's
If
the
it is
case,
fair,
where
yeah.
So
they
then
feel
it
it's fair,
seems
yeah.
men do better when
Like,
they're
by the
in
way-
charge of giving women far more benevolence and rights.
By the
than
way,
if men
That's
weren't
not
in
right.
charge.
I
Not
think you
right.
can agree that you can over coddle somebody. Like, if you protect a child from everything and give them like as much love as possible, they might grow up to be a weenie and might have like issues in the future. I've seen that with women where they're like literally treated like children their entire lives, and then they just can't navigate the world like a functioning person. So I don't see how
gentlemen,
it's a good
must
thing
admit
to infantilize
that
women all the time.
if your argument is to say that you think women should have the right to vote so that we can hold those bitches responsible, then I'm 100% with you
All
on
right,
that.
Let's
well,
go!
there we go.
Let's go.
There we go.
Thanks for the call in, Corinth. Did you have anything you wanted to shout out before you went?
I want to see that vegan debate with Zen, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll set
Hell
it
yeah.
up. I promise. We'll set it up. Vegan Gains welcome here whenever he wants. Next caller, Moby.
Hi,
I know
just
your friend
wanted.
Dick. Sorry.
I'm okay. I just wanted to say vegan gains. I thought you really brought it tonight. You were very high energy. You really brought the heat. You excited everyone in the crowd. Everyone was just on their feet cheering. So I just want to thank you for that. And then I had one more question for you. Where do rights come from?
Where do rights come from? They're granted by other individuals.
So rights are just a social construct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could just say you don't have rights and animals don't have rights, and now we have no reason to be vegan.
Well, no, it just means those rights wouldn't be granted. It wouldn't mean we don't have a reason to.
What's the reason?
Well, like a reason could be if you value things like logical consistency, if you're empathic. Some aspects of veganism can directly benefit you, like health. So there's plenty of reasons. It's just that if you, for whatever reason, decide not to grant somebody rights, then yeah, they don't have rights. But rights have to be granted by others. Like, they're not, like, again, if you're going to say they're granted by God or something, well, okay, has God ever protected any of your rights? Like, if you're protesting and a cop decides to arrest you, do you think God's going to stop you? Like, or help you? Like, no. So they have to be granted by other individuals.
That would include animal rights.
Yeah, that would
So
include
animal rights come from men
and women, because women also
who get
have
the rights from
potential to
men.
violate, huh?
They get their
Well,
rights from
women-
men.
Well, women also are involved in the system of, like food and killing and eating
Because
animals.
men
and shit,
let
so.
them.
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, so animal rights really come from men. So
It doesn't matter. Okay,
so
sure.
if we grant animal rights to animals, which is one of your highest principles, wouldn't you say men are pretty benevolent?
No.
No?
We don't
No,
live in a
still
vegan
not.
world, and men actually are much
Yeah,
more
but if
likely
we did.
to eat meat.
Yeah, if we did though, if men said, "Hey, we're gonna back off on this whole killing animals thing," would that be good demonstration for you? Because I'm pretty confident. Now I haven't looked at the numbers. You tell me, because this is your domain. Would you say that there's more men active in the vegan movement or women?
No, I think still to this day it's about I think either 8-1 or 10-1 male to female to male. So for every one male, there's about 8 to 10 women.
Really?
Yeah, if you
It
go to
sounds like
most,
a great way to not take away their fucking vote. But they're a great reason
Yeah,
to take away
well.
their vote.
So
Just
my
fuck.
follow-up question, and I appreciate the answer. Again, you really brought the energy tonight. So thank you for that. My follow-up question is, since rights are just a social construct, how can you go and appeal as if animals already have rights if it's just something granted by
I'm
man?
not saying they already have right. Well, they technically do already have rights. Like you can't just like murder your dog.
Why not?
So some of them,
People
well,
do it all
Yes,
the
there
I
time.
can.
there are right. So well, yeah, you could, but you'd be violating their rights, and if somebody found out, you'd be
But
prosecuted.
who says they have rights?
People do.
But I'm a person, and I'm saying they don't have rights.
Right, but society at large has said they do have rights.
So society at
Again,
large has said that eating meat is okay. So now eating meat is okay.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm not making a normative statement on whether something is right or wrong based on whether or not something has a right now. I'm just saying animals should have rights.
Why ought they should
Because,
have rights?
well, for a variety of reasons. The main reason is I believe sentient beings should have moral consideration.
Why?
Well, that's just my own personal preference.
That's a great argument. I appreciate it. You brought the
Okay,
energy
well, wait,
tonight.
you know what?
Thank you very much.
Well, since you're such a genius, oh, it's because God said so.
That's a very, very good argument.
All right, enough.
Fucking idiot.
Thanks for the call in. I appreciate it. Eric, you're live. Thank you so much for the call in. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so I have a question for you. What are your thoughts of women being in office?
You mean in government positions?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be preferable to have men in all government positions.
Okay. Do you think it could be edifying for a woman to be in a government?
I'm sorry. I really don't mean to cut in. I want to hear your question, respond to it, but your audio is extremely low.
Well, it's muffled
Oh,
as shit. It sounds like you're talking
yeah.
through a sock or something.
Yeah, it's really
Here, let me
bad,
turn
and I'm
off
actually
my Bluetooth.
yeah, I'm actually having trouble hearing you. So
Is this better?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
way better.
Okay,
Go
so I was asking, do you believe it can be edifying for a woman to be in office?
Sure. You mean to the woman?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Well, that was just my question because I was curious because Saint Theodora was actually an empress, so I was just curious because if you said no, I was going to wonder how to reconcile those things because I've had this discussion with people who would disagree with that.
Well, I understand. I'm just not one of them. Was there anything else that you had, sir?
Yeah, this is off topic, but will Pedro be back on the Crucible?
I don't know if that'll ever happen. There was never any fallout between me and Pedro. Nothing like that. He had some other issues going on in life and called me and said that he needed to deal with those and not the Crucible. So he's still one of my closest friends, and I wish him the best of luck.
Glad to hear.
Yeah,
Have
me
a
too,
good
man.
rest of your night.
You too, man. Take care. Neuro Jack, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead with your question.
I just want to point that out. Neurojack is an absolute king.
Thank you, sir. Thank you guys for having me on. I want to ask both of you guys a question, but I want to start with Vegan Gains, just a conversational, quick couple questions. I am trying to catch you in a trap, so I'll just be upfront, but it's not. I kind of understand where you're coming from, so I think I see where you're kind of going wrong, and I want to point that out, and maybe you'll prove me wrong. My first question is: how do you feel about immigration into, let's say, Canada and the United States as an example?
What do I feel about immigration? I think it's necessary for economic reasons, especially when you talk about not just replacing certain jobs, but keeping certain jobs. It's pretty clear that when countries have at least reasonable levels of immigration, you end up having a greater retention of well-paying but not particularly high skilled jobs. So usually like factory labor, So like GM was the biggest employer in the United States not too long ago, a few decades ago. Most of those jobs are gone now and they've moved overseas. You could actually prevent some of those jobs from leaving if you allow for immigration. The UK has had a similar problem where they didn't allow for enough immigration, and you saw a complete, like all of those jobs, the well-paying manufacturing jobs are gone, and the biggest employers are like shitty companies like Walmart.
Okay, let me. I'm going to veer off what I wanted to do initially. But actually, I'll come back to that. Okay, so my second question would be, if you compare generally the West as far as feminist ideals to somewhere like, let's say, India or some other place where women have significantly less supposed rights, do you see some conflict of interest by importing people into a system in which you're trying to live up to feminist standards, yet the people incoming maybe don't really have those values?
No, you could certainly have issues with like a lot of right wingers, extremists from coming into the country. That's why you do vet immigrants. Like, I don't want somebody who's like supportive of the Taliban from coming into the country. And I do think
specifically about feminist ideas. I mean, the average
sure.
person in India doesn't. I mean, it's changing, granted, but what I'm saying is, in general, people from India say don't really have the same values of feminism as we in the West do, right?
Yeah, sure. So I do think you see a big disconnect between government and the actual people who live there. That is the case in India. That's especially the case in places like Iran. I have not met a single person who's come from Iran who is like very right wing, who thinks women shouldn't have rights. There should be like an Islamic state. They're actually pretty progressive. Whereas the actual government institution is very right wing. I think the same thing is largely true of India, where the people there are a lot more progressive than their actual institution. So that has to be taken into account. But like, I just haven't seen a big demographic like voting change because there's so many like Indian immigrants and shit. You're seeing much more right wing voting.
Well, now hang on, guys. Listen, I'm sorry to cut in, Neurojack. I got to have you have your question over to me, and then I got to have you go.
Sure.
PF Young only has a limited amount of time. We want to make sure that we wrap the show up on time to get him on his way, since he so graciously came in. And of course, I'm going to tip him. Yes, I'm going to tip him, you fuckers, of course. But anyway, go ahead, Neurojack.
So I'll just condense everything down into one simple statement, and then I'll ask the question of both you guys, basically. But so my statement would be essentially some of the problems that you allude to, Vegan Gains, about, let's say, demographic decline within the country could be attributable to feminism, basically meaning the destruction of the family unit is kind of what I'm trying to argue about, right? And so that precedes the problem of demographic decline. Then you import to solve the problem that was caused by, the idea of feminism. And so my question to Andrew would be, do you see any value in the ideals of feminism that are salvageable? And to Vegan Gains, I would say, are there any things about feminism that you think are a problem and that aren't being addressed?
There's not.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
If you want to go first. Okay.
From my perspective, there's not a single redeeming quality about feminism. It was always a bad idea, and it was manufactured by a bunch of occultist lunatics who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And if you read their writings, and you can find this great book called Occult Feminism, which was written by my wife, Rachel Wilson, which goes through them extensively. This was manufactured by lunatics, and it doesn't map on very well, which is why you see me and Vegan Gains are on totally opposite sides of the political spectrum, kind of ending up having to agree on descriptors over and over and over again. People are trying to literally mug your mind of what reality is. It's fucking insane. So no, there's nothing redeeming about it. It's bullshit, and it should be done away with completely.
Yeah, so if you're talking about demographic decline, like people having less children, the main reason for that is just economics. It's becoming so expensive to live, and there's so few social services to support young families that young people are just deciding not to have children, and you're seeing changes in relationship dynamics
So
as a result of that as well.
I just want to get one final point, and I didn't have to interrupt.
Make it fast, man.
I promise. So it don't you think that it's possible that that's a result of feminist ideology, and don't you think it's possible that that is done on purpose by the oligarchy that you think doesn't exactly exist?
No.
Okay, my final point I'll say is don't forget
That was
what
your final point, bro. We have
No,
to
just-
we have to end it.
no,
End
just
it
gonna
fast.
quote- I was just going to quote Mao Zedong: "Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun," and that's it. Bye.
Yeah, but we both agreed that might makes, but that doesn't mean it makes right. I'm just saying. But anyway, go ahead, vegan.
Yeah, like the reason why costs are going up so high, it's entirely due to just corporate greed. If anything, feminist principles like left-wing ideals would probably actually raise the rate at which people have children, because it would make it just cheaper to live.
Except that secularism seems to be the kind of necessary worldview which is entailed with leftism, and it seems that secular people don't breed, at least not nearly at the rates that religious people do. It's not even close.
Well, you could argue that's not because of secular beliefs, but because people who have secular beliefs are also smarter and are better at family planning.
It's true. You could argue that. But if we look at empirics, we do see that a lot of times the people who are the most religious are breeding because they believe it's a commandment from God to do so. Secularists don't believe that. So it kind of logically follows that if they don't, of course, they're going to have less children.
Well, that's not necessarily out of line with my explanation, because a smarter person is going to be able to think for themselves, whereas a less intelligent person is just going to accept things at face value, and regardless of the consequences, they'll just do it anyway.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That seems like you're kind of saying that you think Christians are stupid.
Yeah.
But
on average, Christians, I'd say, are dumber than atheists.
You think so?
Yeah.
Based on what?
I think there's actually some statistics showing that the degree to which somebody is religious, the greater likelihood they have a lower IQ.
Well, that's true, but you would have to factor in other things for IQ, right? Otherwise, you would be a race realist, right? You don't want to be a race realist, right?
Well, there isn't really any great research relating race to IQ. In fact, if anything, the best data indicates that Black people are genetically more prone to higher intelligence than white people. That could be a debate for another day, perhaps, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. From me, from a Christian ethic, race has always been irrelevant to any type of policy prescription. It's it always has, but it's necessary for me to kind of state that, like, look, clearly Christians aren't fucking stupid. I mean, they founded the nation. There's no doubt that they did. Most of them were not deists. They were Christians. Yeah, I know that the deist argument is there, but most of them were Christians. There was thousands of contributors who were Christians. So I'm
not saying being Christian makes you stupid. I'm saying that you're probably going to see a higher degree of intelligence among people that are non-religious versus religious.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I think that is a good debate that we could have. But I appreciate your time very much, Vegan Gains and Paul PF, who took the time this evening. We're out of callers. Appreciate so much everybody's time. Vegan Gains first. Go ahead, shout your channel out to everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on the YouTube channel Vegan Gains. I talk about pretty much every topic: veganism, politics, fitness, and if you want to see me naked, I do have an OnlyFans.
I had to shout out the OnlyFans, but that's okay. You can do what you want. Paul PF Young, also you can find him. He does on weekends, especially Saturday morning. He does a morning show. It's actually quite good. I've called in several times and talked shit to him and vice versa. But he had on the last two times, especially, some pretty interesting guests. I was lurking about So I'll kind of shamelessly shill it a little bit. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to his channel as well. And then Paul, give yourself an outro.
No shame in shilling for PF Young Media International, Andrew. No shame at all. Yes, my name is Paul. I've got a YouTube channel called PF Young. I appreciate this is fun. I made some money tonight. That's actually very cool. It's a very cool thing. So
Yeah.
I also have an OnlyFans. But it is just clips of me wrecking people in League of Legends. So
all right, got it. Well, gentlemen, have a
Yeah.
great night. Take good care of yourselves. So let me tell you what's coming up. We have, of course, Pearl versus Nina, Pearly Things versus Nina. And tomorrow we have the epic Trash Talk extravaganza. That's going to be a ton of fun. We're starting that a little bit early, around 3-4 o'clock. That's going to go for, I don't know, probably till midnight or something like this. Plus, we have to kind of celebrate. We have 11,000 subs. The alt channel got to 5,500 subs in like 48 days or something crazy, right? Just keeps on moving and moving and moving. We have Heem coming up next week against me. We're going to set up the Zen Shapiro follow-up with Vegan Gains. He seems to be adamant that he wants it. We're happy, of course, to provide. Zen doesn't walk away from debates. It's just not in him, right? I haven't even asked him. Just trust me. He's going to do the debate. And we have many, many more in the works. You'll see even better debates coming down the pipeline that we've been working on. So please tell me you didn't say Pearl versus Nina. I did say that, Corinth. You can check the schedule. You can check it. And of course, Corinth, he'll be coming on to do a debate soon too. I have one lined up even for Corinth. Ladies and gentlemen, and there are ladies out there. It's amazing, right? This guy who's arguing for the evil patriarchy actually has quite a few female fans from all of us here at the Crucible. To all of you out there in Crucible land, have a wonderful night. Wait a second. Somebody just made this really good comment, said raid tomfoolery. How the fuck do I raid him? Like, I've been wanting to do these YouTube raids, and I'm happy to raid tomfoolery. Like, I'm actually happy to just raid him right now and put the entire chat over there. How the fuck do I do that? Can somebody tell me how I do that? I'm not actually sure how I do a raid. Anybody got like any advice here? Because I'll totally do it. Like I'm happy to send a raid over. Like, I have no problem with that. But I'm not actually sure how to do that. Does anybody know how you do that? Link his stream and send us? No, that's not the right way. There's another way that you do it. You can actually send your whole chat via YouTube. Let me see. Maybe I can look it up. To raid a streamer. YouTube. How the fuck do you do it? All videos. I don't want to watch a fucking video. Just read the highlight points. You know what I mean? Where the fuck is it? How do you raid someone on this shit? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I only see shit for Twitch. Like, I don't even see it. No, you can do it on YouTube. Like, I can send everybody over there. I just don't know how the fuck I do that. You know what I mean? Now it's gonna, it's gonna piss me off until I figure it out now. How do I turn on raids on YouTube? It's just all videos. Where's the text? I can read through the text in 15 seconds. Copy the stream URL, post it in your chat, and tell your viewers to click it. That can't be it. What the fuck kind of bullshit is that? Redirect. Click customization under redirect. Click add. Yeah, I don't know. I think you got to preset the shit up. I think you got to preset it up. In the I guess in the future I'll do that. For now, let me just put the fucking link in chat. Okay? Put the link in chat. Like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to fucking do, really. You know what I mean? No idea what else I'm supposed to do. Make sure that you tell them. Make sure that you tell these fuckers that you're from the Crucible. Here you go. Get out of my chat and get into Tomfoolery's chat. I'm just going to sit here and fucking spam this for a minute until I figure out. I'll figure it out tonight on the back end how I'm supposed to, hop over or, just send the whole chat over. I know you can do it. So click that fucking link. Get out of my chat. Get out of my chat. Go over there. Yeah, tell him eyeball. Just give him a ton of fucking eyeball. Give him a ton of eyeball. Swarm in there. Give him all the eyeball. Get over there. Get out of my chat. Click the link. I'm only going to redirect traffic for like 1 more minute, and then I'm going to get the fuck out of here and go have delicious food and enjoy my night. So, yeah. What is eyeball? Where the fuck you been, Corinth? You suck. All right. Well, it's there. So click it. Go over there. Raid Tom. I'll figure out how I redirect the entire chat later. From all of us here at the Crucible, again, to all of you out there in Crucible land, again, have a wonderful night.